Call to order the Park Township Board of Trustee meeting for April 11, 2024. We'll start with the invocation from Trustee Jones, and then we'll say the pledge if everyone would stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to come together tonight as a board and a township. We ask for wisdom, understanding, and discernment as we work through the issues and opportunities at hand. We're grateful for all who have worked and sacrificed so that we can be here, for our freedoms, for those who have served, and for the support of our township in our endeavors. Help us to keep an open mind, be expressive of our beliefs, concerns, and hopes, and to govern with both grace and direction. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we're going to go to the approval of the agenda. I would like to add one item. We'll call it letter L, which is the community insurance issue. So the community building insurance issue. So that's going to be L. Does anyone else have any additions or deletions? Otherwise, we'll look for a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Now we're going to move on to the approval of the consent agenda. You've got a chance to see all of those bills, etc., and we'll look for a motion for that. Right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we're going to move on to public comment. Does anyone on this side want to speak? Anyone on this side want to speak? All right, we're going to close public comment. And you've gotten to see the department reports. Any questions for those that are here that would have the answers to it?
Yeah, I had a chat with the chief about something interesting that happened on his watch. And he wanted to tell us on the 8th. We were busy, didn't happen. I'd like the chief to just take a moment to chat about his 18-month-old baby experience.
Chief?
Yeah, on Friday of last week, about 3:30, we were called. One of our residents, 18-month-old baby, was choking on some food and stopped breathing. When I arrived on the scene, both parents, as you can imagine, were distraught. Dad was doing rescue breaths, talking to dispatch. I arrived on the scene myself and went in, evaluated the baby, and tried to control the situation with mom and dad. I can't imagine what a parent would be going through then. So their actions were definitely, I would say, warranted. But I was able to turn the baby over and give lap blows and dislodge some of the food that the baby was taking, and the baby started breathing and never regained consciousness, but we had good lung sounds and good breathing. Immediately, AMR arrived, and it was a load and go situation. So that meant we took the baby, loaded it right away, and headed to Holland Hospital, and they took a rider with them. They actually requested me, and just then some of my staff was able to show up on the scene and be able to ride with him. And then I went to Holland Hospital and picked him up, and the baby ended up, the cause of the choking was because of a fever, which caused the baby to go into a seizure, and was transferred to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital for the night and was released the next morning. The big thing out of the whole situation there was response time. And when we talk about full-time staffing, that's exactly what we're talking about is response times. From the station, I had a 4-minute response time to that. So it would have been either me or the crew and that would have had that type of response time. And we had a great outcome because of it. So.
Oh, good.
Great.
Wonderful. Strong work.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Any other questions or comments for regarding department reports? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to action items. And so the first action item is the pickleball court procedures, and you see the summary from Brian here. You want to make any comments or you want to be ready for questions? Okay.
Come up to the podium. Thank you, Brian.
Does anyone have any questions? I have one question, but it's not really related to this. It's for the kind of the opposite. What is being done for general use? Are there going to be leagues that are playing there? And if so, how often?
Yeah, there will be leagues, clinics, camps. Right now, we're just not sure. Ryan and Jenna, our instructors, are waiting for a date that the pickleball courts are going to be open to kind of schedule that stuff on those courts. So,
Okay. All right.
but we'll have open play, leagues, clinics, camps. So,
Okay.
And the schedule, if the schedule becomes, and I think it will, that there will be some challenges or potentially some debates. If there is, that'll come to the board.
Okay.
So we have heard loud and clear from a number of board members that we need to make sure that we have availability for residents to just drop in and play pickleball. And so we're going to make sure that balance is there. And if you feel at any time that balance is not there, please let us know, because we will bring it from the board and have that discussion if need be. Number of decisions I think we need to make for tonight that are outlined.
Yep. So you've seen the decisions. Why don't we start with, I guess I'd like a motion and approval for each of these decisions. We'll start with number one. The recommendation is to hold 3 tournaments. I guess let's have a motion regarding that or another idea, and then let's talk through that.
Well, put it on the floor, I'll make a motion to approve number 1.
All right, so hold 3 tournaments for the pickleball season, and you're good with the break?
Anybody second?
I'll
Yeah,
second.
I just want to know what the motion is first.
Oh, okay, it's
Okay.
3, number 1 would be recommend 3 tournaments in the summer.
And you're good with the one as recommended here with the Park Township doing 1 tournament and the 2 coming from outside?
I trust that our team
Great.
has done the research. I'm not sure that we, with the limited staff we have, I'm not sure we should get into the tournament business.
Okay.
Unless, Howard, you and Ryan, do you like to get into it?
No, we'll get there. Let's do the tournaments first.
Okay.
And then I just need to make a comment of potential conflict. So go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Make a comment, I'm done in my head how many weeks there are, but what are the 22 weeks in which we're from May through or middle of April through October, 3 tournaments in that many weeks is not very many.
Right.
So I don't see a whole lot of conflict there that potentially could come up. I guess the tournaments are probably 3 days.
Yeah, typically a tournament would be a weekend.
Yeah. No Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, I think I would recommend no more than 1 a month though. Cause
Yeah. Oh, that's
you know, you want it open to the public and
oh, that's good.
I wouldn't do 2 in 1 month.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. I can agree. I'll amend my motion to 3 tournaments, not more than 1 per month.
And I'll amend my second.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Thanks, Jim. That's good. Catch.
Right. Any other questions, discussion on that?
So how, and this is probably more of a general question, how are we gonna communicate whether there's a tournament going on, or there's lessons, or people are just gonna show up? So how do we communicate then to the township, this is what's going on in pickleball courts this weekend, or where they're gonna be posted? How are people gonna know?
Yeah, there's gonna have to be a schedule that's posted online, and these tournaments are gonna have to be noticed out there and advertised. So,
And I would use the fairground sign possibly.
I would think tournaments would be the only thing that would shut the courts down totally.
I think
Lessons and anything else, but certainly, in my mind, we wouldn't shut all 10 courts up.
No.
That'd be a statement.
you guys will advertise it on the site, right? So when you walk up, there's gonna need to be some kind of little kiosk with information that ends up getting posted.
Just a follow-up question. Since the courts aren't done, talking to Howard offline earlier today, could be another couple months. Can we make the recommendation in 2024, there's only 2 tournaments? Because we're already in, by the time they're ready to play, it's gonna be June. Now we're starting to get into a shorter season.
We still got June, July, and August.
And
Or
September.
August, September,
Okay, I'm
October.
just thinking about losing.
It could be a good kickoff.
We were thinking about actually having, there's a potential that in subsequent years, you would go to 4 tournaments.
Oh,
3 was actually because of the condensed timeline that we were in for this year.
good.
Um,
You thought about that already.
Yep.
Good. All right.
Yeah, Brian and Jenna and me and Brian, we all met and we went through the calendar and we came up with the number 3 in looking at a tournament for us and, you know, what the other tournaments and calendars are for this region. And what the potential possibilities are. So, yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
What is a pickleball season? What are you thinking? First of May through?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, pickleball season is going to be a lot longer than you think. If we had nets up right now, you'd have people playing out there tonight.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, not tonight because it's raining, but if we had nets up, you'd have them out there playing. And I think you'll have people out there playing pickleball until there's too much snow on the courts where they just literally can't do it.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask us to take the snow off and still play. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like I'm not trying to be pejorative. I'm just being factual. Like this is how popular this thing has become. And well,
yeah.
I mean, we took the nets down during COVID and they just brought their own nets.
Yeah, if I can speak to that, Lauren. My wife and I were playing with a group that was playing at Moran Park because they'd closed Evergreen Commons. They were literally during the winter bringing snow shovels, shoveling and sweeping the courts so they could continue to play.
So, I mean, we have designed the courts so that there's lighting there. Chad has, and we can talk about this later, but Chad has it designed so that each one is going to have switches so that it can be turned on and off so that there's not lights everywhere. I mean, it's going to be a pretty nice, robust facility.
Like that snow melt.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no.
So, right, any other comments?
$50 per court, see, for a whole day.
We're not to there yet.
Okay, sorry.
So we're just dealing with level 1 or number 1 right now. Right. Any other comments or questions? Right. Seeing none, we will vote. All those in favor of holding 3 pickleball tournaments for this year, only 1 per month, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we're going to go on to number 2. As you can read, do we want to do it on a first come, first serve basis, or do we want to have a bid process? So we'll look for a motion for that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
this is where I need to identify a potential conflict. I'm going to be I'm going to be the incoming president for Rotary. And I would like to organize a Holland Rotary pickleball tournament for all of the Rotary clubs, both noon and after hours. And even potentially bring in Zealand. So it will be a combined effort of all of the Rotary clubs in the area as a fundraiser. When we get to that point, I will take a step back. I wanted you all to be aware of that because I wanted to take one of those slots, but I will take a step back and let other people make those decisions. So I just wanted you to be aware that that's something that I wanted to do, and that is a potential conflict. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion that we use a bid process where interested organizations submit proposals outlining tournament details for item number 2.
So,
Any questions or discussion?
And that goes to the board, or that goes to, yeah.
Who then determines the.
Well, it says the recommendation, the proposals, the rec office with the help of pickleball experts, Ryan, Jenna will select which organizations are granted. So it would be Brian and his team, correct?
There's also alternatively, you guys, the board can decide as well too,
Okay.
if you want us to come back to you with those.
I'd rather stay out of the pickleball.
I would rather stay out of that.
people in the audience.
You will get 200
Yeah,
people in the audience.
So,
I think the bid process makes way more sense.
yes,
Yes.
We're gonna sacrifice a weekend, so to speak, for a tournament. It better be a good tournament.
Yes.
It better be put on with purpose. It better be well organized.
Yep. Yep.
And communicated well also. So,
correct. So, right. Right. So, do we need to add who is approving the bid process or? All right, do you want to amend your?
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to include Brian and his team of experts.
And the second
Okay,
to emphasize that also.
okay, right. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we're gonna move on to number 3. All right, Brian, now we're there.
motion needs to be made before we can discuss.
Correct. I don't know if you want to make a motion or not.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we charge a rental fee of $100 per court per day for tournaments held at the park, Township Community Park. Or
Right. So I have a question. Do you know this, Brian? What does a tournament typically bring in money wise, and what do they typically charge a team?
So with talks with Ryan and Jenna, they said that our 10 courts out there could do a 250 person tournament max. That's how much they would cap it at. And then you'll see anywhere between $40 to $50 per participant as an entry fee.
Okay, so not just a team, but participant.
I think it would be per team, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
You're correct. Sorry.
All right, so I'm gonna do a little math here.
Yeah. Let me just quickly point out that some of those tournaments, I'm sure, will be fundraisers for nonprofits. So we might want to keep that in mind.
Yeah. For the first year, I think $100 is a little steep myself.
Well, the price that each participant is going to fork up is not going to Park Township. That's outside of Park Township. This would be the only fees that Park Township would accumulate.
Correct.
So you're talking basically $1,000 a day. That's pretty reasonable. For 250 people?
for 10 court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 250 people for $1,000.
I mean, I don't want to take away from their ability to raise money, but the flip side of it is we are taking the courts away from the township residents at the same time.
Mhm.
Just having never done this before, I just don't know what's reasonable.
Yeah,
So if you have 250 people, basically each participant is spending $4 to be able to play pickleball on our courts all day.
Well, they don't play all day because there's 250 teams.
With the conversation with Ryan and Jenna as well too, they run multiple tournaments for people. And they were saying that $50 per court was about what they see.
I'd just point out also that the first year is going to be a learning experience. So. Yeah.
Cut it in half, go 70.
Yeah, make a suggestion that we set a rate, and if tournament proposals come in and say, hey, we'll pay $75, I think we could give Brian and team a boundary to make decisions, but I would argue $1,000 a day for what we just put in is reasonable. Based on what we're taking away from the residents, I think it's reasonable. But if we find that we're wrong, I will allow Brian and team to make that adjustment on the per rate cost.
Then you also have to consider if it's a 3-day tournament, that's $3,000.
Yeah.
So.
But most people aren't gonna start Friday morning. And most people aren't going to go till Sunday night. So we're looking at probably more of an evening
2 days, yeah.
and a till afternoon. So it's really of a 2-day tournament. So just
But it's still about, you're still
be
saying
still
$1,000 a day.
$1,000 a day.
Yeah. I think also one of the unique things about our courts is that you have lighting. So that, that you play into the evening. I don't believe many courts have lighting like ours. So I think we do have an advantage for evening play. So,
Brian,
yeah,
Brian, would it be reasonable to assume that the players, if it was a 2-day tournament of Saturday, Sunday, that they would come in on Friday and want to play?
I would say that's safe to assume. I mean, just coming out to play by themselves, not anything organized, but yeah.
They'd just be an open play.
Yeah. Yep.
So. Just amend the motion. Sure. I'd like to amend the motion for first year to be reevaluated to $75 a court. But I also want to put a time frame on when you can play, only because all the courts can get noisy. At what point are we going to say, okay, you're done? Whether we have lights or not, I'd like to say no play later than 9 o'clock at night.
I think that almost needs to be a separate motion, doesn't it?
That's including public and tournament play, correct? Just play in general. I think I would agree with you.
I think if I may, I think we have to set hours anyway, period. And we have to determine what those hours should be.
That's good.
I'm not sure it should need.
Motion, sorry, but
But I don't, has there been any discussion yet about the hours of play?
This is, I mean, you can add this to the motion because it's regarding tournaments. Okay, we can do a separate motion for public play. Yes.
That's good.
Is there an ordinance at Township Parks?
Yeah.
That kind of like,
Yeah.
there's already a time.
We already have a time limit.
I'm if I may, I'm hopeful that we're not going to have noise issues because we don't have residents around this park, and the residents that are around it are pretty far. Now that's not to say that it won't travel and I won't be proven wrong, but I'm hopeful that we have enough space around us.
If I were a gambling man, which I am, I would wager that somewhere along the way, we will hear from 2 residents. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
That's a pretty good bet.
Let's get back to the matter at hand.
I'd like to make a motion. Sorry, I'd like to make a motion that we rent the courts for $75 per day.
All right.
Yeah.
I
All right.
think I support it. I think I
Okay.
support it.
All right. Do you
I'll
support the
modify.
amendment?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. So we'll vote on the motion for a rental fee of $75 per court per day. I guess if Brian, there's issues, you can bring it back to the board. All right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we're going to move on to number 4, the oversight of the tournaments. So you can see what the recommendation is. Do you want to oversee tournaments, Brian?
I do not.
Okay, that, all right, that's helpful. So, all right, so we'll look for a motion. You can see what the recommendation is.
I move we contract Promotion Pickleball LLC to oversee our tournament operations.
Any discussion or questions?
I took lessons from Ryan and Jenna.
You know,
Wow, she likes Ryan and Jenna so much, she's Ryan. Can you note that?
They're very good, very organized. Never been in a tournament, but I was very impressed with them.
She should get a discount on her next,
Any other questions or discussion?
Just a question, this clarification, so then, outside tournaments will have them as the organizing, body on our courts?
Yeah, they'll just oversee, so they can bring in their own organization, but they just have to be overseen by Ryan and Jenna.
Gotcha.
So Ryan and Jenna don't have to run the tournament, they just are overseeing it.
Gotcha, okay, I just want to clarify that.
They are.
So if they ran the tournament and brought it in,
they're running the tournament.
we
Yes.
pay them to run it, plus they'd make the profits from organizing.
They're running the tournament.
Yeah,
Well,
Well,
They're-
if
they're-
another organization comes in, they might not run the tournament.
No, this decision here is no matter who comes in, they are contracting through Ryan and Jenna to run the tournament. Now,
Okay.
the organization, let's just take, for example, Rotary. If Rotary has a tournament, we will pay, and if you approve Rotary of having a tournament, Rotary will pay Ryan and Jenna the $10 per entrant. And they will take care of communication, setup, tear down, running the event, brackets, players. Rotary will take care of marketing and promotions and building the tournament and all of that. But Ryan and Jenna will essentially ensure that all of the tournaments at our facility are professionally managed and run so that we don't have a free-for-all, if you will. So we are saying, nope, they are our,
So they're not overseeing, they're managing.
they're managing the tournaments.
Question on that, Mr. Manager, which organization would be responsible for soliciting or actually enrolling each participant?
Well, that's gonna have to be a coordinated effort. The nonprofit is gonna have to be the organization that goes out and markets and gets the people. And they're gonna be signing up through Ryan and Jenna. Ryan and Jenna are gonna run the brackets. Ryan and Jenna are going to, just like it says, they will run programs for their fee of $10 per entrant would cover communications, setup, tear down, registration, running the actual event, bracket, player questions, communications, medals, etc.
I'm sorry, I missed the registration.
Yep, if asked to do more, such as organizing shirts, graphics, food trucks, insurance, yada yada, rates would go up. And so we're essentially saying, hey, we want all of our tournaments at this court to be done well.
So what if USA Pickleball comes in and says they want to use our courts? We have to say, you got to go through Ryan and Jenna?
I think
Ryan and Jenna?
if USA Pickleball came in, I think we would probably have to make a shift, right? Like,
But
yeah.
so that's my question. I mean, it depends on who comes in, does it not?
It's a good.
I mean, USA Pickleball probably knows how to
Yeah.
run a tournament.
right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe in the motion, say, an organization that is, a professional pickleball organization may have some special dispensation or something. Sure. I think the vast majority of people that want to do pickleball tournaments are going to be like Rotary or the Mission or, those kind of things.
Could we put in the motion possibly on an individual tournament basis that they would run it?
Why not let Ryan decide?
Pardon?
Why not let Ryan decide if they're capable of running their own tournament?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking if we have a contract with them, what needs to be in the wording of that contract?
Yeah, good.
Sorry.
But I think we have to give Brian flexibility to say if the organization of status that has run tournaments comes in,
Right.
he can elect to not use our preferred supplier. I would say our preferred supplier is promotion. Yeah,
I think that's great. I think that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
You good
I
with
think
that?
that's.
yeah, I think that wording's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll amend my motion to say they will be the preferred overseer. Okay,
Okay,
A second to include the preferred also.
So then if we enter into a contract with them, that needs to be worded clearly.
yep.
the first.
Dan's got it.
okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Just one thing, you mentioned food trucks. We're gonna make sure they're all looked at through the county health department, that we're not gonna get any.
They
have-
have to be,
Have
yeah.
to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, right. Any other discussion?
On the food truck. Question is, there enough electricity out there, this food truck,
We're dealing with the food trucks at the historic hangar.
Oh,
So, yep. So we've, when Chad comes up, he can talk through, we've had a conversation when we were doing the electrical to potentially have the ability to plug in around that area. And you can, when he's up here, we can ask him about the electrical out here. But I would, if we're gonna do food trucks at a tournament, I'd much rather put them over there than try to get the food truck in this area, because we don't really have a pad around here. But we did plan for food trucks at the historic hangar when we went through that design iteration.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good, thank you. To letter B, pickleball bleachers and berms. So,
Enjoy lacrosse, Brian.
thanks, Brian.
That's right.
Right. Thank you, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Lewandowski, landscape architect with Prine and Newhoff. Been working on lots of different concepts and drawings at this park, so I'm really excited to see all the progress out here with the pickleball courts. Not too long ago, Howard approached me to look at what would it take to do some berms out here for the pickleball courts. Initially, it was thought of as a spectator kind of situation, with having the berms be something a person could sit on to see into the courts. And so I did some exploration into how that would be feasible. And at the current fence heights at 10 feet, that was going to be a challenge. So to kind of help convey the idea, you'll see on the screen here, I came up with two different concepts. There's only a slight difference between the two, but we ended up looking at the idea of having two different areas with berms. So if you were to look at berm concept one there in the upper left corner, you'll see obviously the big white building. That's the future covered building. That's not obviously out there right now. We wanted to plan for the future with this larger berm, which, if you can see in the image, it would be west of the future building. That's a windscreen berm. It could potentially also be used for spectators once that next phase is built, because it's obviously right there next to the building. But its primary function now, if you chose to move forward, would be for view and wind to aid in the wind screens on the 10-foot fencing that's on the west side. And we also, because I know that the idea of berms for spectators was something we wanted to look at, we thought, well, why don't we look at putting berms on the east side of the court? So you see in the upper right corner and the other two drawings, you can see that in this concept, we just have some berms that would be approximately 4 feet tall in the center, with some trees on the back side, partly just to kind of create a nice ambiance in the space, but also to do a little visual breaking and a little bit of wind breaking also for spectators if they were on the hill. But knowing that the main goal was to get people out here to see these amazing games and tournaments, being a designer, I couldn't help myself. I had another idea. So if you switch to the next slide, which actually I'll do that because I can do it. We thought, what if we just put some bleachers there, right? That's a little more of a conventional way to host lots of people. Sitting on a berm is great, but it's not as easy, right? If you're in a bag chair, or limited amount of people can be on it. So this second concept shows some additional concrete and a pad for bleachers. The cost estimate that I think you may have, I did tweak from this SketchUp model. The SketchUp model shows an 8-row bleacher. That's going to hold about 92 people each. I felt like after thinking about it, maybe that was a little bit much. The other reason is because there may be a desire to have the bleacher be something that's movable. They do make a wheel you can put underneath the bleacher and pull it with a tractor. And at the 5-row setup, that works a little bit nicer that way, a little easier to handle. And you can still get a large number of people on a 5-row, 21-foot bleacher. So if you looked, and I'll for the audience here, that would be, well, I guess it doesn't work on the screens, but you can see it's kind of sitting in front of the berm in that concept. So in concept 2, the western berm, the larger berm, still remains the same shape and size. That one's approximately 7 feet tall at the center. So all that being said, if you were to go to the cost estimate sheet here, it's called magnitude of costs. If you wanted to go with I'm calling it the west and east berm construction. So if you were to look at, and I'm basing this estimate off of concept 2. So to construct the west berm, initially we thought maybe you'd be able to utilize some sand out there. We've got some sand generated from creating some storm drainage areas, but it turns out that after talking it over, it's probably not best to use sand as those berms because trees are going to not do as well there. Just not as good for that kind of a thing. So the costs you see here, I've got some costs accounting for clay if you were to have to purchase clay. I've also been told there may be a way to get free clay, so that could cut these costs down, but I wanted to estimate it as if you had to purchase it. Item 2 there shows placing new topsoil, so a screened topsoil so you can get a good grass to grow on the berm. I have a cost for seeding and hydromulching, and then also to place some trees on the berm. So the cost of the west berm, construction cost is $41,000. The cost of the east berm in concept 2, which is the 2 smaller berms, again, same method, bringing in clay, topsoiling it, seeding it, and putting some trees behind it. That's about $8,400, so much smaller hill. If you were to go forward with everything here, we have a little design time in there, a little construction contingency for an all-in cost of concept 2, both berms and bleachers. Both berms, this is just berm costs of $58,400. If you move to the next little area of the estimate, I'm showing east and center spectator bleachers and concrete. So there I broke out the cost of the additional concrete in concept 2. Adding 21 foot 5-row bleachers in those 2 new eastern pads. As well as adding, let's see here, I added also some 3-row bleachers that would go in the middle area. So those would go either under the shelters or potentially back to back in the concrete area. And that's just another way to get a few more people right into the middle to observe pickleball. And those at 3-row are much easier to move. So I've got costs there for that. I also included the cost. One of the things that we've discussed, obviously I mentioned before about the height of the current fence. There's a cost to modify the current fence to drop it to 4 feet on the east side. And that's what you see here in item number 4. Comes out to about $30 per foot to lower a portion of the fencing on the side to 4 foot, which I would definitely recommend if you want to move forward with this. And so then the all-in costs for both the 2 larger bleachers and 6 smaller bleachers, 3 rows, is $90,000. I guess at this point I'll open it for comment. And there is one other line item here, but it's a different discussion about the Prairie Trail area.
So as far as I'm concerned, again, having played the game,
Mhm.
the most important bleachers we're gonna have are the ones that are in between the courts. So people can watch while they're waiting
Mhm.
to get on again.
Right.
So if we were gonna do a good sized expenditure, I'd much rather see rows of bleachers, the small rows of bleachers between each set of courts.
Mhm.
From a participant standpoint, that's much more important.
Sure.
And when we have tournaments, then I don't know what we'll do, but
Right.
in my opinion, those are more important.
Sure.
But I love the berms.
I have a question. The fencing, is there fabric on that fencing or is it just chain link?
Right. Currently, you mean the current state of the fence?
Well,
There
what
would
the
be.
end is gonna be.
Yeah, in the end, it would be a black vinyl coated chain link fence.
Okay, so people
Yep.
could set up chairs on the outside
Absolutely.
and still see okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can see in the sketch there, there's a little bit of there's an added sidewalk on the east edge that kind of gets you to that other bleacher
Yeah, but
area.
even along the north and south, I mean, they could, because a lot of people don't want to sit on bleachers. A lot of older people like the chairs.
Yeah, so
I'm thinking of the players, Jan, more than the spectators.
So there's lots of room, I would say, between the two. So you've got 2 bays with 5 courts, right? I would say there's plenty of room in between those for spectators to sit, stand, and have room for 6 small bleachers.
Where are I see bleachers beneath the shelters. Where's that? Those, bleachers 5 and 6 going.
They are not in the rendering. Good catch.
Yeah. So.
The reason I did that is because, well, if I didn't have time to update the graphic, I'll admit that part of it, but Howard had mentioned that it sounds like that the landscaped areas that are showing here in the concept are on the docket potentially to come out. And so that kind of frees you up to put 6 bleachers really anywhere in that middle area, under the shelters or not under the shelters. They just aren't showing up in the rendering. Yep.
So the west berm is really gonna be outside of the building that is not erected yet.
That's correct.
So we don't even really have to think about that right now, right?
Other than.
I'm thinking of the wind.
Yeah, my question is that until that other building is built, is that berm gonna be so far away, it's not creating
Yeah.
any help in the first place?
I mean, that's a good question. I guess
Yeah.
I'm not a wind expert, I guess you'd say, but I'd like to think that it will help. Will it be as good as if it was closer now? Probably not, but
There's also going to be a windbreak on the fence on that side.
Yep.
So,
There is.
Something on the.
yes.
right there.
So on-
Yep, there'll be a windscreen.
Yeah, so
Now also.
we have.
Mhm.
And in fact, we were. Yeah, so we have a wind screen that will essentially be right here.
Okay.
So it would be on the end, so this berm is
Yep.
going to be in addition to that wind screen. And there may actually even be wind screening that we'll need to do.
I'd recommend it around, yeah, I would do the whole court.
So yeah,
It's an additional measure because the wind is going to be a significant
Yeah.
factor out there, I
One
believe.
thing that's really nice about the pictures here
Mm-hmm.
is if you go out there, when we take down this fence, which we already have a quote for units, it's a pretty easy reduction in the fence. It's really just sawing off some of the supports and bringing it down to the 4-foot level as opposed to the 8-foot level. And then this becomes actually kind of a nice added feature because now those bleachers are much higher up than that small 4-foot fence, because the 4-foot fence is only the size of what the fence would be in the middle of the courts as opposed to the edges. And actually, I'll be frank with you all, if we had thought about that ahead of time, we would have built that into the design, but we didn't. So now, if you don't have these bleachers here, I heard loud and clear, you can move in bleachers right in here as well. So you could have bleachers on this side
And then temporarily, you can have bleachers coming on the other side as well.
The berm on the west side, I get the raised berm where the trees are at, is that a depression then between the?
That's a drawn in if we would need that for drainage.
Yeah.
Right here,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be a drainage pond, but that may or may not be built.
You wouldn't necessarily have that. I didn't factor that into my cost at all. You wouldn't need that now. That was,
So wouldn't we actually burn that closer?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about that. Matt, we would want to design this so that we wouldn't have retention there. The berm would go closer to the building and we would want to figure out different retention or retention designs.
yeah, this conceptual plan. Yeah, isn't it going as far as engineering? So yeah, you definitely could take that berm in the drawing and pull it a little closer yet. Yep.
Muddy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Muddy. Yeah. Just back to the grandstands for a moment. I'm just wondering, we're trying to accommodate residential play, not tournament play.
Right.
And if we were to say, hey, tournaments bring in a couple extra dollars, we'll buy bleachers as needed. I'd rather be a little bit more conservative on the bleacher play than on do everything right with the berms, work on the wind, experience pickleball as we experience it. We're trying to put in bleachers for tournaments we don't have yet.
Right.
Right. And so it's a little bit, build it, they will come.
Right.
Now, I think, when you start doing landscaping and berm design and bringing in cement trucks, it would make sense to put a pad in.
I agree.
And so if I can make a recommendation, why don't we end up doing 4 3-level stands for the inside, for our daily play. Folks put, they want to see their buddies play, or they're off for a rotation. They sit in the stands and watch their friends play. And those 4 are, we find out, well, we need 6. Okay, well, hey, Howard comes back this fall, say, hey, let's get 2 more.
Mhm.
That's fine. But I would say that we pause on the 5-level ones on the end, the $36,000 charge, until we see we really need them.
Well,
But we have a pad there. I think long-term, I think it makes sense.
But I guess my question is if we're only going to have 3, maybe 4 tournaments a year, why buy something if we can rent something? I mean,
Yeah.
you look at Tulip Time, they have all kinds of bleachers that they bring in. I don't know where they store them, but they have them somewhere. I bet you maybe we could rent something like that.
Good point.
In which case, all those bleachers are sitting on the ground. They're not sitting on cement. And if they're coming and going, why do we need to put a cement pad in if they can just sit on the ground?
The fairgrounds has 3 portable bleachers.
And they can sit on the ground, right?
Yeah.
I just think now you have the cost of the cement, now you have the upkeep of the cement, and then you have the breakdown of the cement, and then you have the replacement. If we can do it just on the ground for 3, maybe 4 weekends out of the year, I just think it's a way to save. I mean,
Yeah, no.
Tulip Time does it. I just figure maybe we can.
And potentially if the tournament is coming in and they need or desire the bleachers, potentially it's their responsibility to bring those bleachers in.
Exactly.
Right? So and they have to contract with the fair board to truck them over here and bring them in, and then maybe there's a charge to that. And the other thing is, Matt, maybe as we don't necessarily have to decide tonight on this, but could we, instead of doing a concrete pad there, could we do a chips and fine pad there? Would that be cheaper? We're already doing a bunch of chips and fine on the trails. Would it be strong enough to and robust enough to have a chips and fine little pad?
I mean, chips and fines is a great material. The only downside to having it near the courts would be if it gets kicked onto the courts.
Yeah, that's good.
Correct.
And
Yes, you know what?
I love chips and fines, don't get me wrong, for trails and nature trails, but I think for the type of tournaments that we're talking about, the level of lighting, the quality of this whole facility, I don't know that you'd want to use chips and fines like right near the courts, but connector trails, sure. I don't see a problem with that. That's just my opinion.
I just have a couple concerns. The bleachers that are in the middle of the courts, are those bleachers facing both ways?
Yeah, you could set them up really however you wanted to, but yeah, they're in the image there. I think I have them back to back under the shelters or in that image. But they could be back to back really anywhere. There's still room to get through.
And
Okay.
how many people considering, what was the capacity of each one of those?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't look that one up.
Would be 30 seats. 30 seats.
So is it on here?
It's on it. 30 seats.
Well, look at that. I guess I did.
Well, I wonder if we're talking the same bleachers is what's in here then. We are. Goes in between.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, that would be a 15-foot 3-row bleacher.
So they're back-to-back bleachers, one looking one way, one looking the other way.
Yep,
Okay, and then I also have a concern
but they're
about
portable.
the west berm. I really don't feel we should put that in until after that building is constructed and those courts are in.
Especially if there's a windbreak up already.
Right,
I think you can't get that windbreak up early enough. And then some trees. I think the part that we're not seeing is how this integrates into the tree, the foliage on the rest of the site. And so I think, let's do it all in conjunction. So you blend that berm in with the 50, 60 trees that we're going to have on that side. And because as you look at the, like kind of a full site drawing, but we have this kind of nice foliage going to happen. And I think this is the right time to do it all at once. I mean, once you start planting we got that grant for $25,000 from consumers. We're gonna start planting trees. Let's get it done. Grow the grass and try to stop the wind as soon as possible. I mean, that wiffle ball, or excuse me, pickleball,
Right.
is so light. And
I just hate to see it destroyed by when they put the other courts in and the building.
well, I think you get far enough apart. I mean, ideally, this takes off and we build those next 6 courts under roof in the next 24 months or something like that. I mean, I'm optimistic that we can get something in the next couple of years. But,
Yep. The other thing, aesthetically, if you look out there, the topography is pretty boring.
Yeah.
If we start adding some berms and some trees and stuff, it's gonna have some interest.
I agree. I do think that if you're gonna do the berms, you do them all at once.
They're already here and they put more dirt in.
Well, and from a cost perspective,
Yeah.
you're gonna, really, when you're building berms, it's all just moving dirt. And did you check with Mike Nyland on, can we get the clay for free?
I mean, I was gonna call him tomorrow as soon as we found out kind of what the thoughts were on this. And see, I know he was moving clay last week. And if the site's big enough, they might still be looking for somewhere to put it.
Okay.
Right. So any other questions for Matt? Otherwise, we'll look for a motion.
I do have one more thing to present, which was if I may, it's related to the park so if you look at this image here, one of the other things we talked about was, again, you mentioned this idea that we have a pretty flat site. Really to just create some visual interest around the trails. I started talking to, again, Mike Nyland, about what would it take to do some contouring, I'm calling it, kind of near the trails. And you can see in my image, these little pockets, right, that are kind of added to the rendering. We just did that today. The idea here would be that Mike or any excavator who you would hire could shape some depressions, and by pushing the dirt out and mounting it to make kind of some rolling hills along the trails. I think there's a visual benefit to doing it. It's going to kind of break up the monotony of the flatness out there. If you get down 3-4 feet, you start to encounter maybe water from below a little bit, not talking about a pond, but just you might have some additional moisture at the bottom of this sand, which might start to develop a different plant species. And if we're going to be planting this nice new prairie, you might get a little bit of extra diversity as well as the visual interest. I'm not gonna guarantee that, because I don't know for sure if the water's 5 feet, 6 feet. It's near there. But on my estimate, you see here, again, talking with a contractor, Mike, he and I talked through how long would it take to do 4 acres of dips and humps? And that's basically what you see in this drawing here is 4 acres worth of dips and humps. And we figured it would cost about $2,000 per acre for a total of $8,000 to add some visual interest along the trails, if that's something you guys are interested in looking at.
Did you happen to talk with the folks that are doing the prairie planting?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we also met with ODC and they recommended that we do that this spring so that because they'd like to, as soon as, I would think by mid-May, they were planning to do their herbicide treatment out there on all of the invasives. So it'd be ideal to disturb the soil now, and then they would do an herbicide treatment.
So it won't affect what they're hoping to accomplish. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So you would take a whole acre and raise it?
I've got estimated here
Or just,
4 acres worth of.
yeah, I know.
Yep.
Different spots.
Four different spots.
Well, if you look at the graphic there, I actually have,
I'm sorry, you're not.
oh, I'm sorry.
What you're doing.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Matt, I got it. That way you can say.
Those little pockets here. So there's multiple ones.
Yep.
They're not just one big one in each acre.
So just for each one of those little pockets there, just for your knowledge, is about, I'd just say average 40 to 60 feet wide and approximately 150 to 200 feet long.
And how high?
And those, I would say that those depressions could be, we could go deeper, but I would probably recommend no more than 3.5 to 4 feet down and no more than 3.5 to 4 feet up, just to create some rolling hills. If we go deeper, we might encounter water. I don't know that we want ponding,
We don't.
right?
4 feet would be a lot.
Yeah, I think it'll make for some nice visual interruption out there for the trails. Yeah, and so all of those little circles equal about 4 acres worth of dips and humps.
Any questions about that?
Those are not on the trail itself, it's.
That's correct. They would be, yeah, they would be probably 20 to 30 feet off the trail. You'd see the start of one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So we're looking at approximately 4 acres of this. Are they going to treat this the same as they do the prairie land?
Mm-hmm.
So we won't get a cut in cost and 4 acres less for the prairie.
Yeah, because the seed mix of the prairie land is so diverse.
Right.
That what's gonna happen is the seeds that are naturally more prone to a slightly wetter environment will start taking hold and not killing off, but they'll be the dominant plant species and the other plant species will kind of come up. So there will actually be a diversity in your plant life, but it won't be a different seed mix.
Right. Correct.
That's right. Nice. Any other questions for Matt?
Jim, I just want to make a suggestion that we kind of take a couple of these chunks in different motions.
Exactly. That's what I was going to do.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, no, this is totally two different things. Yeah. And so, all right. I guess stay close, Matt, if anyone has any questions. So what we'll do first is we'll look for a motion. If you want, I guess the question is, do you want to put bleachers and berms together, or and we'll separate this last thing, or do you want to do the bleachers separate than the berms?
I would suggest that we do the berms 1,
okay,
bleachers 2, and the contouring 3.
Yep.
Does that make contouring number 3? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we can proceed with the berm contouring on the west and the east sides as recommended.
Okay.
Is that recommended for, I'm sorry. I'll support that, but I do have clarification. Is that for concept 2?
Yes, please. Yes, concept 2.
All right, any other questions, discussion?
So the layout would be that the west berm would probably pull closer to the building. We would still have some open area in front of what would be the east berm for the potential of bleachers or if somebody was to send a tenant up or whatever.
Yeah, as long as we're there, I need clarification. I heard multiple concepts as to our expansion. That we're building 10 courts and we're covering 4. What is the 5 courts? What is the future of our proposed expansion?
What's under roof there, Matt?
It's 5 courts.
5 total courts under roof.
If you look at this page,
Yeah,
it's right here.
right.
So,
That's what I mean. To me, that's the 4th iteration of what I've seen. So that's why I'm curious.
well, and there, when the time comes, it might be different again.
It might be, it really is. Yeah, is that what we're looking at here?
If we can fundraise for it and we can afford it, we've always desired at some point in the future to have more courts and some of those courts under roof. That drawing that you see there is not set in stone. It is not guaranteed that that is what's going to happen. Those courts could go north, but I like this layout. I think that if we were to do something under a building, under a roof, I don't think you do 10 courts under a roof. I think you do 4 or 5. And so that's a nice design that maximizes space, but it is contingent on resources and capital campaign and how the demand happens over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, and you know, what I'm saying is that if we go with this and we build the berm, then we're kind of saying, essentially, this is kind of our design.
Yeah.
But there's room for 5 courts here, not 10.
But there's room north of it too.
Right.
North of, you know.
North of here.
There's another block.
Right.
I think the nice thing about the particular on this design here, we're committed to not going too much farther into the site going west. You know, we're the concentration of the court in the course. If we do build more courts, it's going to be closer to parking lots, closer to buildings versus going out into the middle of the park. I mean, yeah, so I almost like having the end zone there. You know,
Terry, this is what we're talking about right here, and then this square is potential more future.
Yeah.
You can double it to the north, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate clarifying that.
All right, any other questions, discussion?
How tall are those buildings?
I've got them drawn in the concept. I can't flip the screen anymore, unfortunately, but it was 7 feet in the center of the big berm. And that could be, again, that could be adjusted slightly if you wanted it shorter or taller. I did a 1-on-3 slope, so if you did want to mow that slope, you could.
Immediately ask this question. That's what you missed it.
Okay,
Just,
All right, go ahead.
just real quick to clarify, I did just text Mike. He said there is clay available and he said he could reach out to other people to get more clay. So there's always quote unquote clay available. It's not, we can just put the word out and try to figure out how to get it.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, any other questions, discussion?
Thank you.
All right, we'll vote for the motion on the floor, which is to put the berms in as recommended by Matt. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we're going to move on to the bleachers. I guess we'll look for a motion on what someone's idea is for bleachers, and then we can discuss it and go from there.
I'd like to make a motion that we purchase 4 3-row bleachers to be arranged in between the courts as we best see fit. And that we wait on anything beyond that until we determine how it can best be used.
All right, any discussion?
I'd like to propose an amendment and make that 5 bleachers.
Why 5?
because we have 10 courts, that puts bleachers between each set of courts.
You're not gonna be,
The problem is two of them two are gonna go back to back.
right,
So you're gonna have two back to back, so you're gonna have four,
And then
and then you'd have to have.
That's 160 people.
I think we'll be lucky to get that many people sitting on them,
we always buy now.
unless there's a tournament, so. Right, anyway, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion for 4 30-seat bleachers, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And then last but not least, we have a opportunity to do some contouring. So we'll look for a motion about contouring the 4 acres. Yes,
Before we move on, I would, I'm assuming then that we are not doing any of the additional concrete for the future larger bleacher pad?
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Any motion for the contouring that Matt explained to us?
I move that we approve the contouring as recommended by engineer Lewandowski.
I second that.
wow, he became an engineer.
Any discussion?
The only,
Thank you.
the only discussion I would have.
I'll be telling Ken I need a paint bump.
You're welcome to.
Any discussion?
So the discussion on the motion that I would have would be that we consider this additive only from the perspective of not digging into what we have here, but by bringing in clay or other materials to add these berms, not to create depressions to create them. Does that make sense? I guess I'm concerned about creating depressions.
Okay.
That the berms would be created from fill being brought into the site as compared to fill being moved around on the site.
Well, we're talking about the contouring.
I know.
Yes, okay.
Matt,
Yeah,
what say you?
I was, the only reason that I feel like that may not work well is because of what ODC wants to do with their prairie plantings. I do think they're expecting to be planting into your native soils, and bringing clay in to plant into the native soils might affect how they would want to do that. Like I would want to verify with ODC that they're okay with planting prairie on top of clay in that scenario.
But I thought well, let's pause for a second. I thought on the berms, we're not gonna have prairie plantings on the berms. The berms are just gonna be grass, right?
No,
We're talking about that. We're talking about the contouring now, which is in the 4
Yeah, the pickleball berms are already estimated as clay with topsoil.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Yep, and the other ones are, in my estimate, at least just estimated based on contouring with just an equipment.
Can I ask what your concern is?
Just the things that are out there, right? If we disrupt things that are out there, is that gonna get us in trouble?
So like the other area that we're dealing with,
Are
okay.
we gonna dig up something? we don't
I guess the question is, should we have that assessed before we start moving things around?
Well said. That's all.
Is this something that we could perhaps table for a month and get us a better idea?
Yeah, let's
Do we have time regarding ODC's timetable?
I mean, yeah, ODC was hoping to do their herbicide treatment in mid-May, so.
So we have a meeting before then.
Hold on one sec. This can be an administrative issue. If there's going to be any issues in terms of the material that's out there, in terms of any contamination, then I cannot in good conscience, in good faith, move forward. So if there's a problem, there's going to be a stop. Okay. We will make sure that if this is approved, it is approved, and we will talk with the environmental engineer from Prine and Newhoff and make sure he is comfortable with our approaches. And so if he's not comfortable, we don't do it.
No. Okay.
Correct.
So even though we're approving it, we'll still verify, obviously.
That'll still be verified. There's an absolute stop if there's a problem.
Okay.
Brian, you don't have a problem with it being, what's the right term?
Depression, we're not creating a leak.
Right, but you don't have a problem with the fact that there's gonna be a depression there for the next 60 years, that's only potentially 3 or 4 DD. Or
Two or 3 feet. I mean, right? I mean, you're,
Yeah,
4 sounds even deep. I mean.
Right.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a lot, but I think you get their most visual benefit from, it's a big space. I think you'd want to be at least 3 feet.
Okay.
So
That's the size that I have them on, yeah.
Okay, all right.
imagine
pretty
it's
big.
not a hole. It's, you're just going down gradually, you're coming up gradually and,
No,
right.
I think
Kind of large depression, make it small.
right, right. So.
I have a question on all of this in front of us. These are estimates. Are we gonna go out for bid on this, or are we approving this certain amount that we don't? How is this gonna work?
I think in order to continue, if this is the year of the park and you guys want this built quickly, this has to be, we have to operate the same way that we've operated with the pickleball courts, which is we will go and bid this project, but it will not be it'll be an open bid, but it won't be completely open. In that the two main excavators that we're going to look to is Ron Keek and Lakewood Construction. Those are the two guys that have been very good to us as a community, good pricing, good value. And so we'll go and look at both of those and we'll say, okay, bid it, and we'll take the low bid probably from those two. So it's not going to be an open bid process that goes through the plan room of Prine and Newhoff. I think that is overkill, and I think we will get a better deal if we do it in the way that we've been doing this whole pickleball complex. That's
Don't show them the estimates.
I told him that already. That's the reason I was afraid of having it in the packet. It's a good point. Thank you. But no, it'll probably be 2 bids.
Okay, all right, back to trustee Jones, you put an amendment out, are you going to keep that amendment, or are you going to rescind the amendment? Okay, all right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of proceeding with the contouring, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, very good. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to the pickleball court stamped concrete. And you can see what is before us here. I'm going to ask one question before there's a motion. We have two bids here. And we're going with the higher bid. Is there a reason?
No, we're going with the lower bid, and I will let Chad explain it because he's standing in front of us, but it is it will make sense. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, the lower bid did not include the sidewalk.
Oh,
That was
okay,
just the stamped concrete for the middle.
okay, all right, all right.
I had trouble coaxing a bit out of them at all. They were
Okay.
busy when I was doing that, so
That's why it says on the one does not include the sidewalk
Okay,
leading.
yep.
yeah.
Okay, that's what.
So the custom is quite a bit cheaper. And did you guys get the color charts I had? Did those
Yes,
go-
yep.
And you also have to decide colors and style too.
There are more colors online, but the only notes I have, I would not pick one of the wood planks or anything with a straight line because we have almost 300 feet. The odds of them getting that perfect there's going to be some wiggle in there. I would pick one of the ashlars, the river stones, the slates, the cobblestone. I would go with a lighter color to keep heat down, like the grays or.
Right, so we're gonna do this in a certain order. First of all, we're going to look for a motion to approve the bid in the first place. And then we can look for a motion to choose the type. And then we can look for a motion for the color. Is that what you
Yeah,
wanted?
and I was gonna see if I could pull it up online because I didn't realize they have many more colors. I thought it was fixed
Okay.
to this.
All right, well, while you're looking for that, we
We'll
will
do that.
look for a motion to look for a bid for the stamped concrete for the center and the sidewalk.
Do we have discussion before we even motion? Do we have?
I guess we can do discussion first.
Okay, I gotta ask why.
Why what?
Why stand concrete when Why are we gonna use pouring concrete? It's easy to sweep.
Because the board wanted stamped concrete like 2 months ago. That was like specifically the board requested stamped concrete in the middle of the courts.
And I think you put the motion up, Brian. I couldn't resist. So.
Can I make a motion?
I mean, you guys could go back to regular concrete. It's totally cheaper.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why we did this and when you actually start looking at the decision going like, okay, we're gonna have
Yeah.
colors and contours. Now I'm going like, why do we do this?
Designer.
And so I would recommend that we do smooth concrete, easy to upkeep, it's just cheaper. But it's also simpler to maintain again.
Yeah, it looks like crap.
So you were the, that's an architectural description of,
Yeah.
Concrete.
Yeah, but it's
In reality, I think we did the right decision, 2 months ago, to put some design around this whole complex.
If you guys
That's what
want,
we continue to do with the bleachers, we just made a decision on. We got the overhang and all of a sudden we're just gonna have 300 feet of just pure blank concrete.
There is a middle option.
we're gonna have the landscaping in the center where the
Well,
bleachers
Well,
are.
Chad and I are gonna have to check on that because we just brought bleachers to the middle, so.
Yeah,
We're gonna have some planters, but it's not gonna be as big of a planters as initially created on the plan, and we're gonna save money based. on how we do
Because I'm
this.
saying that'll break it up a little, the
Yeah,
plain
there'll be
concrete. up a
some,
little bit.
there'll be some green, some planters somewhere. Go ahead.
We could go mid-grade too. We could do stamped concrete under the shade structures. We could do, so it breaks it up and we get a little bit of beauty out of it, but save some money and
Is the stamped concrete flat?
it's not as
No.
flat as flat
So
concrete.
putting bleachers on stamped concrete might not sit as well.
But yeah, there's a potential for a little, they'd have to get adjusted and so that they'd sit even.
Not to mention, now you got it. It feels like a
I think we made a
maintenance
decision.
issue, right? Where now we've got stuff in the stamped concrete, that would blow it out. And I wouldn't want to see us spend the money for stamped concrete instead of bleachers on top of it.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Vice versa. The concrete under the bleachers and the stamped on the walkway.
So again, kids access people, are we creating trip points? Are we creating a maintenance nightmare? I want it to look nice, but I think people are coming to this thing to play pickleball, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Mr. Chair, Matt Lewandowski. wanted to-
Sure.
There is one more option, if you'd like to think about it, would be done in lots of downtowns where they want to keep their maintenance low, but have a nicer than standard concrete. It is a colored concrete that has got a exposed look to it, not exposed aggregate like in the 70s with pea stone, but with a smaller stone. And it puts just a nice little texture on it, and it can be colored. And I'd be happy to show you examples of that too, if you're looking for something that's gonna be a little easier to maintain, but have a nice look to it. So,
Did you entertain a motion to put
not
it
to
on?
complicate it any further.
I said, the only thing that I have though, I have to have the concrete one before the coating can go in because the sand is blowing everywhere.
Okay,
So it is kind of,
okay.
I am not qualified to pick a color.
I'm not picking colors.
If we do color in concrete, that means that we're making a decision for the next
50 years.
lot of years. That's what color that concrete's gonna be.
I guess,
That terrified.
well, someone can make a motion for something different.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion just to test the waters here. I make a motion that we end up going with standard concrete, brush standard concrete.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, all right. Done.
Okay, we will, if I may, Mr. Chair, we will submit the bids to the supervisor. and we will move forward.
I request permission to send a link of this meeting to all my friends and relatives.
You don't need our permissions.
All right, now we're gonna move on to letter D, the historic hangar. You see the recommendations here. I guess, do you have any comments on this, Chad?
Yeah, the Maple Bay, they did not include all the doors in their bid, the exterior doors that go in the main part of the hangar. So their bid ended up being the most expensive. And then I made some calls here too, because some time's gone by, but Trulia Construction has time to do it now too, and they're the low bid. And they took the time to bid all the other options I had too, if we wanted to do anything additional.
All right, now did I probably missed something here? How are they the low bid?
Oops, sorry, what was that?
How is Petrulia the low bid?
Oh, is that in? I don't have a
Because,
copy of your memo there. If you have to add in, if you take out the options, which no one else bid, they're down to, I believe, 54,000. And the Brett Crawl, if you add in the bid for the doors, and he's 54,935, and he also didn't include the masonry to cut out and add in those extra doors.
So what are we taking out of the Julius?
No,
What numbers?
must be 13 and 14, it looks like.
Yeah, there's the alternate 2 and 3.
5,600.
Yes.
So that would be 54,278 roughly.
Yeah, I had 54,228 and 7 cents, and then Brett Crawls was 54,935.
So it was off by just like.
But he also didn't have the masonry for that, so there was a small.
Okay.
There'd be extra that I would have had to just quote out separately for that, which I could do if he was, if he was lower, I would have just done that.
All right. Okay.
So his recommendation go true.
Any other questions, or otherwise we'll look for a motion?
Make a motion to approve one of the building inspector's recommendation for Trulia Construction for the airport hangar renovation.
Support.
Any discussion?
We have it.
I'll have to make all those calls, so in the next week we'll have a time frame. I mean, but they had availability to work that, everybody that we had, so.
They said spring, they had availability. So hopefully we'll start construction here very shortly.
Great, thanks.
And where is this money coming from? What account?
The
Capital improvement.
capital improvement. Oh, that's right, because it's greater than 10,000. Yeah, capital
Yeah.
improvement.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Right, very good. Okay. And now we're going to move on to letter E. And you see the water and sewage trunkage fees. There's some increase in some and some decrease in others.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there is a gentleman that is online. If you should have any questions,
Okay.
you have the report there is the full report on the trunkage fees. This is something that we should do every 3 to 4 years to reanalyze our trunkage fees and make sure that we're collecting enough dollars for our capacity projects. Please note that this is on the capacity side, not on the maintenance side. So trunkage fees is when it's a new hookup and those monies are put in accounts for capacity improvements in the system. If there's new pump stations, new mains, Eagle comes in and says, we need more looping because we don't have enough redundancy in the system, so on and so forth. So that's really what this is for the most part. I will share with you, this is very low in terms of the state. If you go to the Ann Arbor area, it is not uncommon to see these fees at $15,000 a hookup.
Right.
So they went up.
Is it comparable to other townships around us?
Yes. And again, the gentleman is online. Have you unmuted?
Yes, I have. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hello.
I
Yes,
guess-
we've worked with Holland Township and the Holland BPU and Park, in the area. This is the same method that we've used through the other areas as well.
So are we just really overcharging at the 6-inch meter for the commercial?
So on the sewer, I'm not sure where historically those numbers were coming from. We had only done Park Township's water connection fees. We did that in 2019. And then this was an update to those. So you see how the in the water proposed fees that they're a bit, they kind of coincide with what was in there in 19. They're higher. It's about an inflationary of just about under 3% a year, moving from 1391 to the 1541. But in the sewer, we are not sure the rationale that was used for the residential versus commercial. And in all reality, in the sewer, it would be rare to find a 3-inch residential connection. But the fee that we are proposing for sewer was developed the same way as we developed the water.
Okay.
So one question, we're gonna charge the same for residential and commercial for sewer hookup?
Correct.
That's assuming the meter size. I mean, so, if you've got a commercial customer, and their sewer charge, or their need for a larger meter, then those costs are gonna go up.
Correct.
So,
You might have at 1.5 inch, you might have a residential customer with a large yard that wants a lot of sprinkling. But yeah, whether it's more by meter size as compared to what they are.
Makes sense.
Do we have anybody in the township on a 6-inch meter?
I'm not aware of anybody. Dan, do you remember if there was anybody on a 6 meter?
In doing your study, is the fairgrounds in your area?
Yep.
So they might have one that everyone kind of takes off of. But a lot of times I'll put one customer just to get a customer in that size to make the calculations work. But we'd have to verify if you actually have a 6-inch out there.
What I believe the fairgrounds does have 1 6-inch, the rest of the water comes out of where the community building was. But those meters are now outside of the community building, and those are small.
I want to say the Camp Geneva is 3 or 4. It's definitely not 6.
But they've already paid the trunkage fee, so.
It wouldn't matter.
So what matters?
Right. Any other questions, or otherwise we'll look for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed water and sewer trunkage fees. Looks like effective immediately.
Any other discussion? Right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
All right, now we're gonna move on to letter F. So term limits as it applies to the Board of Review members, and this is goes a little bit against the term limit policy, but it's to promote some continuity as you can see on page 112, what they're suggesting.
Make a motion to support the assessor's recommendation for the board of review term limit approach.
Support.
Right. Any discussion?
This only makes sense. You would have lost all three of them at once.
Right. Right. So, all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right, now letter G. Here is a reappointment of Kendall Branson to the West Michigan Airport Authority. Do you want to make any comments, Skip? Or
Yeah, just briefly, Ken actually helped design that business center at the airport. He's been involved with it for a long time as an architect and also as an interested spectator. He's done a great job. We've got he's only served one term. I think our 1 3-year term and our limit is 9. And I think the airport's limit is 8. So he's good to go as far as I'm concerned.
all right, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make that motion to reappoint.
Support.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And now letter H, the appraisal for the former Coast Guard station. This is something, if we are interested in possible purchase, then we need to have an appraisal. And you can see what is before you.
Which approves the expenditure for the appraisal of the Coast Guard station.
Support.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Now we're going to move on to letter I, fire department full-time staffing. We've had some conversations about this in the past. This I'm fine if we want to discuss first. If someone wants to make a motion, that's fine too. And if you want to hear from Chief Canby, you want to make any comments? Yeah, why don't you? Okay. Could you come up if you would, Chief? So just tell us, as far as just to refresh my memory, what you're recommending for staffing.
Okay. What I'm recommending is, if you take a look at the proposal that I turned into you, I'll be referencing the EMS proposal cost summary. We're recommending 4 full-time firefighters. The fire service would actually be paying for 3.5 of them, because one of those firefighters would be half-time be a code enforcement officer. So they would work half their shift. They put in about 20 hours into code enforcement, and then the other 20 hours would be in the fire service. We also put in for 2 vehicles. We believe we need 2 vehicles because we've been seeing a lot more and more back-to-back calls where we're getting multiple calls coming in. So if one unit was out and another call come in, that other second vehicle would be going out. And if a third call would come in, then the bigger rescue truck would go out. A little more cost effective, a little less. Because of the call volume that we believe we're going to seek, it's going to put a lot of wear and tear on that bigger piece of equipment. If you remember last month, the estimate came back at about $200,000 for 2 vehicles. I contacted all the vendors, the manufacturers of the vehicles. We looked at electric vehicles and what them costs would come back. They were more expensive. What we came with before, and they were a pickup truck. The team of firefighters that we talked to, the pickup truck really didn't fit our need like what the extended expedition would. And so we took a look at that. But anyway, I went back to all the vendors, all the equipment, our lights and sirens and that, and I was able to get $36,000 removed off the price. And so that price of $164,626 would be a 1 year expenditure to get us started, and then that would drop off the years following. And we figure that we'll probably get a 10 to 15 year life cycle out of those vehicles. We also did a cost summary of what our legacy cost of that type of vehicle was. And besides tires and batteries and stuff like that, it's going to be the same type of vehicle that I drive, and we're less than $300 a year maintenance cost on it. So very, far as inexpensive, been a very reliable vehicle. One thing we do know, if we do order them, we're probably not going to see them till late August, September. They're that far out, and being very limited. The Chevy Tahoe, we looked at that, and I got an email from there. They rescinded their submittal because they can't produce those vehicles until late in 25. So we're really backlogged on there. Another expenditure that you see on that summary is the Perry Street Station, providing an office for these firefighters. And we're going to hold off on that simply because we are going to do some renovations to that training room and painting and stuff like that. But we didn't want to put in temporary offices depending on what happens to the Coast Guard station. If the Coast Guard station comes to where we were going to purchase, then that would be a perfect area to have an office for these people to do their reports and that. And then we're not spending money for a temporary office and then pulling it out and getting rid of it. So we can make that work for 3-4 months and see where that does. So we're going to kind of slow up on that. My recommendation was 2 people on a shift. They would be running from 7A to 7P. We see that the majority of the calls, 389 calls they ran last year between those time zones. So we feel there. Now, the biggest thing too is, yes, these firefighters will be our EMS response. That's not the only thing they're going to be doing. You know, we talked about when we get into water rescue, when our jet skis are on the docks this year and ready to respond, times is an essence. If a water rescue comes in, these people will be heading to the jet skis to get on there. If we have a fire, we'll use one of them inside, and then we have to have the other person being available for a call, and we'll supplement a firefighter on the scene to fill that regulus too and going out. They'll be handling gas calls, fire alarms. They'll be doing inspections. They'll be working on inventory and maintenance and stuff like that. So yes, they're going to be, their primary response will be just like mine is. If a medical call comes in, I leave and go and take that medical call, but they're just not going to be medics. They're going to fill that fire response role. And when we look at full-time and part-time, what you're really paying for is response time. If you take a look at the training that the firefighters go through the city of Holland being full-time is the same training that we send our part paid through. There's no difference in training there. The full-time firefighters get more experience because they're seeing more of the calls. They got to go through, they're required to do the same testing, the same, everything that it is. When we see a part-time, when we look at part-time firefighters, the average, national average is 8 to 12 minutes to responding to a call. When we have full-time staffing, that average changes down to 4 to 6 minutes. I've been on full-time now 2 years. And if you take a look at our call volumes, the volumes that I responded when I was on duty were right in that 4 to 6 minute mark. But that's only one person in a truck. And so now we're going to be going with at least 3 of us in 2 different vehicles.
Any questions?
Just remind us on expected call volume. I think that stat that you shared with me the other day, you know, what we're seeing today on current, what you're doing today currently, and what you would expect the call volume to be. I thought that was quite surprising.
Yep. And I took a look at that when that came back. You say, okay, the chief came up with 580 calls. Where did he come up with that? I called Central Dispatch and asked them to run me a report on how many medical calls was generated for Park Township in 23. And that included both sides. And it was right in that 580 mark area. Well, when I looked at the board report, I took a look at Sergeant Bennett's report that he did right here. You read, and it says how many medical calls he had in Park Township, and I added them to see where the calls and what calls they came up with. And in 22, he came up with 477, and in 23, he got 483. And it's like, well, that's not the numbers I got from dispatch. Why is there a difference? And a couple of things get affected that. If they didn't have a unit on to respond, then they wouldn't get credit for that call. It was automatically, if they didn't have a person fill in a shift or they had a shift open, then those medical calls directly went to the fire department. So they didn't get there. And it depends on how that call was classified. And that's something that both fire and police is working with Central Dispatch. If we go to pick somebody up, like a lift assist, is that a service call or a medical? When we take a look at it, if I have to go in, I just have to pick somebody up to get them back either in a chair or back into their bed. We look at it more of as a medical because I want to understand why they fell. Is that a early onset of some issues coming up? And so I may go ahead and do a full IPS on the person or a full set of vitals. Well, then I'm going to classify that as a medical. Compared to if another agency is on there and they just needed an assistance to help picking that up, then that would be considered on my side a service call. And so that's where you're starting to see the difference of there. In Central Dispatch, both police and fire sides are trying to work that so we get better statistics on what's happened there. But we project it's going to be somewhere between the 550 to 580 mark. And that's going to put us about 1,200 calls a year.
And what level are those?
I didn't have them broke down as priority 1, 2, or 3s, but they would be a mixture of all of them.
Because obviously getting someone back into bed or in a chair is much different than something else.
Yeah, very different roll call.
So was your response time slower or faster than if you had someone else in your vehicle?
I don't think it would matter if somebody is in the vehicle.
Would 2 always go out, or would just 1 go out so that the other one's in reserve?
We would always go out. We want to work in pairs. we don't, because of safety issues and that, I think is a really bad idea going out by yourself. I experienced that Friday, and I can tell you, it's not a great feeling. The other thing too is besides the medical, they're going to be going out on seal alarms, gas leaks, something like that. We don't want to send a person in that situation by themselves.
So 4 people, 2 are on day shift, 2 are on night shift.
No, they're going to run a 2-shift platoon, 7 days a week. They're going to come in at 7 a.m. work till 7 p. And just 2 of them. And then, so, right, we're going to have an A-B shift. So,
Cover 7 P to 7 A.
Say what?
Who covers the night shift?
The night shift, we're going to evaluate that for 3 to 6 months, see where that goes. But that would be a station call. So that any medical comes in at night, we're going to call out and make it a station call. What we're worried about there, and what the concern is about there, is from that 7 P to 7 A, if we have to be calling out the station, those people could get up 3-4 times through the night and go out in a call and then try to get up in the morning and go to work. That's going to be short-lived because that's going to be too hard on the crews to do it. And then we may have to adjust to 24s. And then we would have to look at putting 2 more people on and run a 3 platoon shift, and they would be on 24-hour shifts. But then we got to be able to provide living quarters for them. And there again, if we get that Coast Guard station, there is living quarters there, and that may be the Band-Aid until we can figure out living quarters at the station. And we're hoping that, it doesn't go to there. That's what happens when you start getting bigger and running that 1100 to 1200 calls a year.
No, go ahead.
We pay for a service today, correct?
Correct. And if you look at this paper here, you got that. It's on there. So. It's, you look under, there's E-unit deputy, which Park Township pays $317,000, plus there's the paramedic sergeant, which Park Township pays $42,999.
So this is what you currently pay for essentially medical rescue. It's stuff here. This stuff we're going to talk about that next month. But this is coming through what we're replacing. So 317 plus 42, call it 360. And
Are we, I'll be done. I think I might have asked this before. Are we getting a rebate from Ottawa County on not getting service time?
We're still working on that, and that will be on the agenda for next month.
Okay, thank you.
So, but I wanted you to see the costs tonight for this discussion. So when you go for a call, does not the sheriff deputy come?
If they're available to respond, they would still be coming to the call.
Right.
With us.
And what about if it's during the daytime, say a Saturday, doesn't someone from the station come as well?
No, it would be the on-duty shift, the on-duty 2 people.
So when there's a gas leak on a Saturday, no one from this fire station comes? No one gets a call?
There wouldn't be unless the on-duty shift would determine that the gas leak was more than they could handle, and then they would request, that crew at any time could request that it's going to be a station response.
And who does that now?
Well, if I show up, right now we have, most of them calls are automatically a station response. If I go on say an unauthorized burn, I handle that myself. It's not a station response. And if I get there and that burn is something different than what was told to dispatch, it's like a field fire or a brush fire or something too big that we couldn't pull it out, then I just get on the radio and call for a station response.
So, and because this is all new and I'm seeing these big numbers, I guess I'm just wondering why there has to be two people.
Well, because like I said, because of the safety issues, they're going to be not only going to different calls besides the medicals, but even on the medical calls, the fire service is different than police service. All of our training is based on working as a team effort and a team environment, and we're not trained to work by ourselves. The second thing is we don't carry sidearms, we don't carry tasers, we're not trained in hand-to-hand defense tactics.
Right.
And I just don't think, there's great people in Park Township, and there's people in Park Township that doesn't like any type of government. And I don't, I've been on the street for going over 38 years, and I can give you quite a few references where it was in more or less a hostile environment to go into. And I don't think that's the direction that we want to take our employees that way. The sheriff department has been running the E-Unit program for almost 50 years, and they've done it by themselves. But there again, that is the real big difference between those two types of service, being at the fire service and there. And I think there's too much liability that we would be risking, not only for the employee itself. All we need is somebody to make an accusation or make some comments, and we're in the defense mode. And I just don't think, with the way society is today, that's what we need to put our people into.
No, certainly if you're going into harm's way, you wouldn't go into harm's way whether there's one people or five people.
You hope not.
So from that standpoint, I don't know, I wouldn't expect you to. I mean, if someone has a gun or a sidearm, you're not going to go into that, whether they're, like I said, whether there's one person or five people. I'm just trying to look at this because I know once you go into something, you never go back.
Mhm.
You can add, but you never subtract. And I know I've talked with deputy, and they said, well, they come to the things, and I know you have the calls to the fire department, and then they come. So we could potentially have 4 or 5 people there for something that doesn't need that much. And I guess that's the only, I mean, I love what you do. You do a great job, no doubt about it. I'm just trying to think from a financial standpoint, is it prudent to have that many people? It's just my opinion. So anyone else have questions or comments?
I want to talk about the vehicles a little bit.
Okay.
I think your 164,000 looks like you're thinking about that they're priced out the Ford Expedition.
2 of them.
Yeah, 2 of them, right.
Yep.
You made comment about Chevy withdrawing their proposal for a Tahoe.
Yeah, the Tahoe is correct.
Yeah, and did GMC do the same? Because it comes out of the same factory.
Look, GMC, you can still get the Yukon.
My only comment about that is, from a maintenance standpoint, probably not a whole lot of difference between those vehicles, but from a gas mileage.
Mhm.
Yukon or Expeditions are notoriously horrible. You'll be lucky to get 5 miles again around town. You'll get 18 in a GMC. I got one and I do it. I mean, that Yukon is a horrible. The Expedition is absolutely horrible. in gas.
You get 5 miles to the gallon?
They are horrible. I've just in Florida, I just had a guy and I was talking to him and I said, how's your expedition? He said, it's horrible. And I said, no different than they've been for 10 years. It's amazing because they both got the same, GM and Ford went together and built that 10-speed transmission. And it works great with a GM, but it works horrible with Ford. Don't ask me why, but it does.
I believe when I remember what the prices came back, I want to say that Yukon was about 10,000 more.
But it looks like on your
Yeah.
sheet, yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee you'll need that 10,000
So
very rapidly in gas.
mm,
That's just a comment.
yeah.
So did I understand correctly? You're not asking for the Ford F-150 anymore?
Not for the battery operated. No, the electric. That Ford F-150, I just, put the prices there, and that's not figuring the charging station installed in the topper that we'd have put on it is not the price of that 62. So
Why 2 vehicles, Chief?
why 2 vehicles is, like I said, the first one would be, the first 2 people would be using it, would be in that vehicle for the day. And because we're seeing multiple calls come in, and the amount of calls that we expect that we're gonna have, the second vehicle would be cheaper to run than it would run in 1572, the mid-sized rescue unit. When we see departments running those types of vehicles a lot, there's a lot of mechanical problems with them. And so what we're trying to do, and some of our areas are a little tighter to get around with. They have smaller roads in some of our older areas. And so it was just to eliminate a high maintenance cost in having some of our more important vehicles broke down, like the rescue truck and stuff like that. Just trying to offset that cost.
Now, I understand you're 8 to 5, whatever you do your hours, I figured that enough that you're on call that night. But I would be all for 2 vehicles. If you're 2 full-time guys, one in one vehicle, one in the other, and they both respond to the same call. And then they're on the scene and you're working on the numbers. You happen to get a second call. One of those person can leave the scene. The other one stays behind because by that time, usually AMR is there, sheriff's department's there. And if it's during the day when you're working, you can break and respond to the others. I have a hard time finding 2, even one sitting in the garage.
Well, one wouldn't be, they would, A shift would kind of have one vehicle and B shift would have it. So it would be alternating. But there's a lot of different, operational, we could take a look at something like that. We're going to have to get a feel for this. I honestly believe in 3 months, we're going to have a different product than what we're going to start out the first week. Or this is going to be a learning in progress. And I believe, I said that last month when we first started talking about it, we're going to have to be very dynamic with this. Things are going to change and we're going to have to feel what's going to work and what's not going to work. We're trying to run this 12-hour shift and seeing how many night calls we get. We might be able to say, hey, we're going to keep it at a 12-hour shift, and it might work perfect and it may not. And so we're going to be able to adjust and move as it goes. What we will make happen is if we do have a medical call, we will have somebody showing up and responding to that call. If our residents or our customers have a medical emergency or something like that, there will be somebody responding, you know. I made that comment here months ago that we have enough equipment now purchased that we could go 9 medicals deep. You may only get 1 or 2 people in their personal vehicles, but you're going to get somebody to show up. You know, and that's important for the community and the fire service.
One more question. You want 3 guys. And the third one is gonna be 20 hours, the other one gonna be 20 hours, 4 guys. The fourth one's gonna be 20 hours with you and 20 hours with the township. The 20 hours that you don't have, where is that person gonna come from?
That person's going to be coming from our part paid. So we're going to offer that to our stations to be able to do it. What does that do for us? Well, it's an incentive that a person can get more experience and run more calls, but it also gives our part paid, and we're hoping that it would help our hiring process of our part paid because it gives them a really good path to working towards full time when there's an opening.
It's a big deal.
And
this is something that I pushed for because there's too many departments, paid on call departments. And then they go for some full time, and then there's a divide between the part-time guys and the full-time guys. And I've seen it over and over again. So I charge the chief with identifying slots and opportunities for our existing part paid folks to get that experience. And also so there's that bridge, right? I do not want this department split. And we've got 2 factions because it does happen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's Yep. It's building blocks that will do that. Or if one of them would call in sick or have vacation days, we got backfill. And there again, like I said, it's a great opportunity. Like Howard was saying, bridging the gap between that full-time and part-time. The also too, and I really didn't figure a lot on this, but if you take a look at our ISO rating, we did just get into the 4. You know, and this here by adding more of full-time staffing will get us more into the middle of the 4. You know, the 4 has a range and we got just on the skirts of the range. And now we want to get and stay more into the middle.
That would definitely help because they understand, they look at a lot of like the commercial areas, which we have marinas. But they look at all your pre-planning and now you'll have more manpower to do some of that stuff and get all that to folks.
Our goal is that we're going to be able to get out to all of our commercial areas every year to be able to get some. I mean, that's our goal. Like I said, these people just ain't going to be coming to the station and sitting waiting for a medical call. That's not going to happen.
You're not going to buy them a new TV?
No. We're gonna, by adding full-time staffing, your fire department takes another step up. That's what comes with this, is our service jumps up 1 step.
Good question. I think the sheriff's department does a nice job with the Explorer. Consider the Explorer as compared to the Expedition from a size perspective?
The Expedition, I believe, is just a longer wheelbase, and that gives us more room for the equipment we carry because, as I said, in their Expeditions or Explorers, they're carrying just the medical equipment. We're going to be carrying the fire side of things. So we're going to be carrying air packs and we're going to be carrying meters for gas calls and stuff like that. We're adding more to that. It's considered, it would be considered a small rescue unit.
And then what are your capabilities of caring for medical calls?
With the
So what are you capable of doing once you go to a medical call?
We'll be at, like I said, we're gonna upgrade my, once I get a few more staff members, I had 11 staff members go to upgrade their license. Right now, we're licensed at an MFR and we have to provide that service 24/7.
Let me rephrase the question. Are you going to be carrying medications? Can
Yes.
you carry Narcan?
Yes.
Okay, what else can you carry?
Brudol, and that's for breathing problems, Narcan, Epidural. Aspirin, we'll be able to give aspirin, Zofran, that's for nausea, oxygen, glucose for medication, and we'll be able to put a CPAP on if somebody's having breathing problems. We'll be able to put a CPAP on, and it opens their airway that they will be going to their
CPAP.
CPAPs.
CPAP, PAP.
PAP, yes.
And then can you start IVs?
No.
Okay. All right. And will you have a AED with you?
We'll have an AED and also a defibrillator, a Lucas, the thumper.
Yep. All right.
We have them currently on all of our medical license units
Okay.
there.
And then how often when you go to a medical call, does the sheriff not show up?
Now?
Yeah.
Well, on the south side, I would say that's more often because they spend the time over here on this. And so a lot of times we'll get on scene, and then if AMRs get on scene, we can go ahead and cancel them. And on the north side here, we are just currently a backup for them. So if they get multiple calls, or if they're out of position, or if we see that they have anything into being a class 1, we automatically get called. But otherwise, on a regular priority 2 type medical in North Park, we don't even get called out unless they're backed up.
And so will the vehicle be stationed on the north or the south?
Both of them will be at the Perry Street Station, north side.
So if there's a call on the south, you'll go to the south side?
I do that now. I'll head over there, yes.
But will this, what we're talking about, go to the south side?
I would probably, right now, depending on what my schedule would be, I'd probably be the one heading over there, leaving the 2 people over here. Depending on what my schedule is, simply because with this change with the unit leaving us, I don't think the south side is going to change very much. That was one of the big reasons we started the medical program on the south side, is because of the medical coverage.
Okay.
And so we already have firefighters that can respond during the day over there, and then I would be coming to be the backup. So it would be just a regular station call. The only type that the north side would be a full-time call there, but the south side would leave just as a regular station call as they're running now. I think last year they ran 40 medicals. And like anytime after 6 o'clock at night, if you think of the unit being over here or in Holland Township, where the majority of our population is, 6 o'clock at night, I have 4 or 5 firefighters that are like within 5 houses of the fire station. There's no way anybody could beat a person walking out of their house and walking.
Well, yeah, that's
fire
why
station.
when I brought up the question, you brought up the south side. So, because I didn't think it would make any sense for the person on the north side to get to the south side. So I was just wanted to clarify.
I would head over there just as a backup and be part of that, if they needed any assistance. Like I said, we try to make sure that we have an officer at every scene.
Okay, right.
If something goes wrong, we got management right on the scene.
Any other questions? All right, we'll look for a motion.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
So when do we foresee this staff starting?
That I would have to work out the final details with Howard in that, but I would say that we're hopefully, depending on how the hiring process would go, maybe in a month and a half.
Okay, and then also you're taking Perry Street Station off of your request?
And doing what?
Perry Street Station rental, offices, whatever, the 25,000, you're taking that off?
I wasn't gonna take it out, but I wasn't gonna spend it right away. Let's.
Boy, be a politician.
I do want to remove it because I want to see how this Coast Guard station plays out. There's no use. I don't think there'd be any use buying a temporary office and putting in if we know that we can get in that facility yet this year. We can make it go as it is. But if we see that's going to be a long drawn out process, then we have to give those people some type of cubicles to work in, because every medical call they go on or every call they go on, they have to do either a state or a federal report on it. So we're going to make some temporary arrangements in that, but that's just one of the things I'm not going to start next week, putting in a temporary office if we don't have to. So that's kind of the things I said we're going to work out and figure out how it works.
Based on comments made by our manager, it sounds like the Coast Guard facility is a couple years out, right? I mean, he has mentioned sometime this year I'll be able to get in. That would be,
Yeah,
that's not possible.
I don't think you're looking at, I mean, I think the earliest you're looking at a true conversation around the purchase of the Coast Guard station is in the winter of this year. And I think you're right. I think likely it's bleeding into next year.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with the federal government and the military. They've already, I mean, based on my memo, they already set it back 2-3 months because they've decided to do an environmental assessment before they do the appraisal. So
It's out.
yeah. So doesn't mean we're not going to get it, right? We're still the negotiate, you know, we're still the only people that they're talking with. That's a good question. I will ask that question. That's a very good question.
Well, Jim, you're looking for a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the chief's proposal for adding 3+1 and vehicles, uniforms, and the Perry Street station as it happens. But approve the motion as the proposal as it stands.
Any support?
I'll support it.
Any discussion? I will voice my concern once again that I don't know that we need 4 full-time people, or 3.5 full-time people. I don't know that we need 2 people on a shift when the sheriff is likely going to be there, most likely, and a call from the fire station person will likely be there, as long as well as the EMS or whoever's coming. That's just my opinion. I think we can always add. It's really difficult to take away, and so that's my opinion.
I agree with you there.
So, any other discussion?
If we were gonna do that, then is it that we're just hiring 2, or is there a way to hire 2 plus a floater? Is there anything, any way in your mind that it could work where you're not hiring 4 full-time people, but you're hiring either 2 plus a floater or some other, at least to start with, not saying that it has to be that way forever, but to start with, that's so that we can evaluate and see that, yes, we really do need 4 full-time.
I could take a look at it operational. We'd probably, if we only could hire 2, we'd probably hire 1, and then the 1 being half as a code enforcement officer yet. And the reason we wanted to make that code enforcement officer / being a firefighter is to give us some stability in the code enforcement area, because so that people would stand there. If we did still hire just one person that would run person. Operationally, I would have to take an extreme look of how that one person wouldn't be on the scene by themselves. Operationally, like I said, I'm really against having a person going on a medical or any type of gas call, fire alarm, any type of call there by himself. That's just too much of a risk for our personnel. And so operationally, there would be some changes, whether it would be a station call going out with that or me going, I would automatically go with them if I'm available, but it would take away from some of my availabilities on other projects and that to go with them, because I'm just not gonna, I don't feel comfortable at all running by themselves. I've worked on the street too long to put somebody at that risk. So, but
And what you're basically saying is your part-time paid coverage would go up. I mean, if you pay full-time personnel, like $69,000 line you have in there for your overtime would have to go up because that person, you're gonna rely on those people then to cover for the overtime percent.
well, they wouldn't cover the whole shift. They would have to cover that call if that call came in. And so when it's the station, just like now, if we have a call during the day, we can get anywhere from 5 to 10 people to show up and they all get paid for showing up. So, that cost wouldn't go away by having 2 full-time people. That wouldn't have to be a station call. So you wouldn't have that expense of 5 to 10 people showing up because they're not going to be called out. It's going to be handled by your station calls. So that's where you're going to, yes, you're paying for full-time staffing, but you're cutting wages over here because they're not going to have to respond. And that really is going to help, because when we have those calls during the day, you're pulling people out of factories. And that's where we're seeing that push coming back from our industrial group of how many times is that person going to be able to leave work.
And the response times go up.
And the response times will go up, correct.
Right. I just think, we can spend a lot of time on pickleball, berms, grandstands, hangar restorations, but of all the things on our agenda tonight, this is absolutely the most important thing that we're going to make a decision on, the safety of our employees. And all due respect, Jim, yes, it looks like it's heavy. I need to respect the professional standing in front of us, that when we go on a medical call, that it is done well. We only need 1, 2, 3 people in the course of a year getting suspect help. And we're in trouble. And so I don't want to mess with this. The professional standing in front of us, who has been a veteran of fire service and medical service for years, is recommending this proposal. I support them. I stand by my recommendation and motion.
We have a second. Okay. Any other discussion?
Is there opportunity for us to go to the political, the township with knowledge or something? It's one thing that
Comes out of the millage. Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
And our existing millage is high enough to cover the heating costs.
Yes and no, and let me explain. So we believe that we will be able to float the first year or two of this. If you move to the chief's proposal, there is going to be an increase. We don't know yet what's going to happen next month with your decision on the police side of it. I believe regardless of what you decide today and regardless of what you decide next month, we will be able to float all of the costs for a year or two. We will, once we make all of these final decisions, need to go back to the voters and reauthorize the public safety millage, and there will probably need to be a slight increase to cover these costs, but we will not need to do it now because we have enough fund balance to cover those gaps. And next month, there's going to be a whole different level of conversation, which is going to go back to that sheet that you have, which is how much police response now are we going to have to address? And then that is going to be when you will hear from Mr. Eric DeBoer there in the back. We're working on some proposals. We're working on some additional partnerships to bring those costs down. I'm telling the sheriff's office, they need to do everything they can to get those costs down. Because at the end of the day, if you approve this, which seems likely might happen, to approve this, you are going up in cost substantially. I mean, yes, it's not going to always be 651,000 in the first year, but you're going from essentially what is 2 full-time people to 4 full-time people, right? So, I mean, yeah. And so that is why we need the sheriff to find other partnerships and see if we can squeeze those costs as well. So anyway, sorry for the digression.
That's fine.
Tell them where money's coming for the cars,
Yeah, I mean,
coming out of the capital.
yes, the money from the cars. There is availability of the money for the cars in the existing millage, but any overages would come out of capital improvement.
All right, any other question? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. All right, let's move on.
So that was a 6-1 vote.
Okay. All right, so now we're gonna move on to policy review. And
Tonight.
I guess I'll just take it this way. Is there any concerns in either chapter 3 or 4?
I will just wordsmithing in the ethics chapter 3, and then I can coordinate that directly with the manager, if I need to go through all that. Good point.
I just want to point out under ethics, number 21, personal conduct. I think we've been lax in that in the past, and I'd like to see us pay more attention to it in the future.
All right, so do you have, do you have some changes?
Yeah, they're just wordsmithing, so I think some better choice of words. Words
Okay.
are in there.
All right,
We've got ideas in there.
okay.
The only thing that I would bring up would be in item 25, we're on a per diem, but yeah, we still have to submit receipts. That would make sense to me. Any other organization that's required, I guess I don't see a need to have to submit receipts when you're on a per diem basis.
Well, you might not use the whole money.
Is that a legal requirement? May I ask the treasurer or the finance director or something?
Okay.
Yes, Connie, is there a legal requirement that receipts have to be included if there's a per diem? Or is the per diem automatic?
Well, it's against state law to pay for alcohol, so that's usually the impetus behind the itemized receipt.
Yep. I was gonna say, when I go to a meeting at the office, I have to turn in receipts.
Military, State Farm, 4 different other organizations, per diem. You spend what you need, where you have to need. You want to spend more than that, spend more than that. If you want to spend less than that, you spend less than that.
You are the outlier. I have never had that situation.
Nor have I.
I have had receipts in my entire career.
Yep.
So you're the outlier.
So
So
certain receipts are required, but I'm really referring to meal receipts.
If I were a finance director, I would have a hard time paying any expenses that weren't receipted.
Okay, I don't have a problem with it.
Right. So I guess you can make your changes and then we'll bring this back to the next month.
Right. And I would point out one more thing in chapter 4. And that is,
Pages in.
Your expenditure, it's just a general comment that, you know, it says don't accept gifts. I consider lunch from a supplier to be a gift. And I will not let them buy me a lunch. I would hope everybody else understands that distinction.
Okay.
Under chapter 4, public comments.
Oh, okay.
In the very first, on the second item, board, item 4, any expenditures that the board had voted on, I think it should be the board has approved. Kind of wordsmith in those there.
Which, where are you looking at? Oh,
Sorry,
oh, I see, number 4. I was looking at number 4 down below, not number 4 under 2.
And
Okay.
then, bank accounts, signature. I don't see it appropriate that the manager would have signature capabilities on our accounts. It's not an officer.
I know it's in there.
I don't disagree. I mean,
I don't either.
I don't think I'm on any of the counts as a signator. But yeah, you could take that out. That's fine.
Certainly not on the checks. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it's just,
Right.
yeah. I've never heard of a manager being on banking accounts in a
Right. I
municipality.
haven't either.
Maybe a very small one. I mean, maybe in Lake Town, but maybe Alice. I have no problem.
And then, expense reimbursement on number 8. It doesn't refer to anything for employees. Could employees be involved with expense reimbursement, or is that covered by the policy?
That's probably the employee manual. Right.
There. But I would think that it should be in our board, in our policy. I'm not sure. That'd be great.
I can't guarantee it is. I mean, we have employees that submit expenses all the time and we pay them as long as they're legitimate expenses. Yeah.
Yeah, this will just be for the board, so. Anything else? All right, so at least on this, we can change under chapter 4, item 2, bullet point 4, any expenditures that the board has approved. And then remove under bank accounts and manager, I guess. Yeah, and manager. Then we'll look for a motion to accept those changes.
So moved.
Gary, you want to support since they were your ideas? You don't have
Did
to.
somebody move or did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. All right, now we're gonna move on to board members' salaries. And we have a executive summary from Clerk Keeter. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. If not, if you want to read it, that'd be fine. And then we'll look for a motion. Thank you for doing this, by the way. That was helpful for me.
My pleasure.
Just a comment, 13 to 16. Or I'm trying to think, I see it's top, all three, let's see, that salary. 13,104 was
For the
that
last 16 years.
all three of
For all
those.
three of us.
I'm not real good at math, but that doesn't seem like we're compensating for a lot of inflation, even when we go up to 16 into 18. I mean, so how did we determine that 16, 18 is sufficient for the job entails? I mean, looks like we're hardly catching up.
I chose moderation, you know, and salaries for officers are always a difficult thing to approach, because none of us is in this job for the money. And I did not want to give the appearance that we are.
That's right. Mathematically, I thought we had done a math problem in there.
No, if you look at the townships around us, the next closest clerk is at 26,000 and something, and the rest of them are higher.
Yeah, right. The data doesn't support what you suggest. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If anyone wanted to make a motion to raise those figures, I wouldn't quarrel with it, but I felt like as I was walking that tightrope that I didn't want to appear to be money grubbing. I wanted to appear to be still a responsible public servant who was getting compensated for an inordinate amount of time spent.
Well, that was a loaded comment there.
Yeah.
I thought it's kind of diplomatic.
If you apply, using your thoughts about inflation, and if you use 3% a year, 16 years, talking about 48%, right? This increase would be from 13 to 16 is 23%. So not even half, or very much 50% of the inflationary variable rate. Very what we observed here in the last 3 years. My feeling is that they're 2,000 short. But they ought to be about $2,000. Each don't make a motion in categories. And I support what Skip says. None of us really support the down, but yet there's a lot of time and energy spent. Especially with 3 officers that are having trigger or pretty demanding.
Are you suggesting 18 and 20? Or are you suggesting 20 and 22?
18 and 20.
I personally don't have any issue with that. I think I appreciate the perspective. The flip side of it is, I'm not sure we do ourselves any favor from the perspective of this is a real job. It takes a ton of time. And to discount it, I don't think it's fair to the people doing it, but I also think it sends a wrong message to the township as well. So I'm personally kind of more in favor of 20 and 22 kind of number, knowing that it's probably going to be at least another decade before we do this again.
Part of the motion I would consider if it was made is that I would make an amendment to it that it's reviewed again in 2 years. Okay, and, to give you an example, for instance, in Illinois, you have to set the salaries for the next 4 years prior to the election, prior to this year. And during that time, it doesn't change. So the motion then is for the first 2 years, this is what the salary is, and the next 2 years of that 4-year cycle is just another value. Sure. We could do the same thing here if we thought that we wanted to.
I think that's a great idea.
So if I could make a motion?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we increase the salary of the supervisor and the treasurer to $19,000 and the salary of the clerk is 21, with the increase being reviewed on a 2-year basis.
In 2026. No, so Howard, you need to remember that. We could all be,
I do.
we all could be gone.
Right.
Because the whole board is up.
Right.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's great. I support.
Any discussion? I'll give my 2 cents worth. You could triple the money. Doesn't cover.
It's
What we put in.
It's true.
Okay.
I
do this. Let me finish.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, sir.
I do this because it's a service, okay? And so I appreciated the 16 and the 18. Now, one of the things you have to consider, and I talked with Clerk Keeter before the meeting about this, is every municipality has different levels of employees, okay? I believe we have more employees with the clerk than others. Okay, so there may be some, maybe not totally apples and oranges or apples and apples, okay? But the other thing I look at, we got a lot of money to spend over the next 4 years for the township. Any money we take away from the township. So that's my 2 cents. It's not a lot, but every little bit helps. So.
I'll just put a comment together. I think one of the things we could do as a board for the township to start creating some metrics. I.e. employee per township residents. Dollars per employee residents. If we get some metrics that we look at and look at it in historic, we can see where our line is going. In terms of just understanding, our organization or financial side against the total number of constituencies, say the number of residents and employees, people that we have in the township. And I don't know what an organization that doesn't have those kind of things that we have. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? All right, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor of, let's see, was it 19 and 20? 19 and 21. So 19 for the supervisor and treasurer, 21 for the clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. All right, and now, let's see. Now we're gonna do community building insurance issue. And our legal counsel, Mr. Martin.
Sure. As you'll recall, the community center building was struck by lightning and burned down just a little under 2 years ago now, I think it was. The township board has been talking about rebuilding that community center. One of the ideas is that it might be rebuilt here on the park property. There has been some of a dispute between the township and the insurance agent with regard to whether or not you would have code coverage. So in other words, when you rebuild that building, it would have to be up to current code. If you rebuild it on site, the insurance company is indicating that there would be coverage. They haven't explicitly formally denied that there would be coverage if you rebuild it off-site, meaning across the street here on the park property. But they've strongly implied that that's their position. So the township hasn't fully settled the claim with the insurance company yet at this point. I've reviewed the contract and previously advised that while I'm not an insurance expert, I look at the contract and I believe that you would have coverage. The township manager has worked with another attorney who is an expert. And so between that law firm and then also the adjuster, I think it's a good idea for the township board to give some authority and discretion to the professional attorney and the professional claims adjuster that's been working on the township's behalf. And so it's kind of in a twofold approach. One with the attorney having a motion to retain and authorize that law firm with Jacobs and Deemer to provide legal services for you, which could include, in the attorney's discretion, authorization to file a complaint against Tokyo Marine, a specialty insurance company deemed necessary by legal counsel and the manager. And then second, with respect to the claims adjuster that's been working on behalf of the township, a motion to authorize Globe Midwest Adjusters International to file appraisal proceedings against Tokyo Marine, again, if deemed necessary by legal counsel and the manager. So that you still are like delegating authority to Howard and me, Howard and Tim Deemer to make the decision as to when and whether that kind of action would be necessary. Appraisal in this instance is different than the appraisal that you would be doing for the Coast Guard station. It's not like an appraisal to buy property. It's basically an appraisal to figure out what the total claim is worth. We don't think we're at a point where that would need to be done immediately, but it might need to be done in the future. Obviously, the manager, legal counsel would continue to keep you informed, but it's my recommendation, given that there are sort of some of these moving parts, that you have a motion to retain and authorize Jacobs and Deemer, PC of Detroit, to provide those legal services related to the community center insurance matter. And that would include initiating litigation against Tokyo Marine if deemed necessary. And then authorizing Globe Midwest Adjusters International to file appraisal proceedings against Tokyo Marine if deemed necessary.
All right, thank you. So
For summary, thank you.
when you say deemed necessary, could you give an example of what that means?
Sure. So as of now, as indicated, they haven't formally denied that there would be code coverage or the code improvements if you build outside of the original site of where that building was. They've alluded to it in negotiations with Howard Mishney, who is of Globe Midwest, who is our claims adjuster. They've alluded to it, they've kind of suggested that in some letters, but it hasn't been a formal denial. My opinion is a formal denial would be a violation of your contract, your insurance contract. It would be a breach of contract. It might be that if it ever gets to that point where they're formally denying it, the insurance specialist litigator, Tim Deemer, would say, hey, it's necessary for you to protect your rights under the contract, file a breach of contract claim in either state or federal court against Tokyo Marine to protect your interests. Similarly, on the adjustment piece, there may come a point where Howard Mishney says, you know, we're done negotiating to try to get a resolution. I generally think it's a good idea to try to resolve things outside of court, outside of what is effectively the arbitration if you can. But there may come a point where Howard Mishney has been negotiating on behalf of the township and thinks that you are being stonewalled and that the claim might be worth a lot more than what they're offering, rather than just continuing to negotiate and not get any movement, get the independent third party, just similar to an arbitrator, to say this is what they believe the claim is worth based upon the value of the building, the materials, having to rebuild it with the code, all of those things. There may be a point where, again, Tokyo Marine is saying, hey, we'd replace the building, but all these code improvements for putting in, you know, modern code requirement. For example, it's a 2-story building, you would need an elevator today. If they claim, no, you don't need that, that's when Tim Deemer might need to go to court to have the judge say, yes, absolutely, code applies. We don't think it's necessary immediately right now, but we don't know when in the whole process we might get to that point. And rather than having to come back to the board, but the board could retain and authorize Tim Deemer's law firm to do the litigation if necessary, again, with the sort of protection, if you will, of Howard and me working with him to say, okay, now's the good time. Same thing with Howard Mishney and his company, Globe Midwest, to do that on the appraisal side. Again, we don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. But we just want to be prepared if necessary.
And then let's say there's some going back and forth about what Tokyo Marine will give and what Howard Mishney thinks. So does he make the decision on whether it's good, or does that come back to the board?
It would come back to the township, ultimately to the township board. Like to settle the claim, it's gonna come back to the township board.
Okay. Okay. All right.
With one caveat, if I may, it will come back to the township board in terms of any settlement discussion. If it is recommended and you guys would be consulted and make the decision ahead of time to go to appraisal. But if it was necessary to have to go to appraisal, then the decision is amongst the arbitrator and one of the parties. So this is an interesting nuance that I did not understand and recently learned that there are 3 entities involved, the arbitrator and then the 2 parties. And 2 of those entities would have to agree to the deal. The arbitrator and one of the parties would have to agree, and then it would be essentially a binding arbitration. So it would come, all of the negotiations will come in front of the board, with the exception if you decided to go to appraisal, then it would be just the appraisal.
Right. So you're looking for 2 motions?
Correct.
Okay. And is there a way that those need to be worded?
I would recommend a motion to retain and authorize the law firm of Jacobs and Deemer PC of Detroit, Michigan, to provide legal services related to the community center insurance matter, including authorization to file a complaint against Tokyo Marine Specialty Insurance Company if deemed necessary by legal counsel and the manager.
All right, that's a good motion.
That's a good motion. I'll make that motion.
All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Glad you thought of it. Right, support.
Yes,
All right, any discussion or questions?
If it went to the appraisal, would we see the appraisal values?
Eventually, yes, but you wouldn't be in a sense at the table for the arbitration. So for example, when I often do labor arbitrations, there will be usually schools that I work with, there are school representatives at the arbitration. You wouldn't be at the arbitration. It's basically going to be a sit down between whoever's working for Tokyo Marine, Howard Mishney on behalf of the township, and the arbitrator who's ultimately deciding what the value of the claim is. But once that happened, if it happened, it would come back to you and you would see what the appraisal was after it was determined. Now, if the adjuster on our side or the adjuster at Tokyo Marine side agrees with that appraisal, as Howard indicated, it becomes the binding number as to what the value of the claim is.
We wouldn't see that prior to you going into arbitration.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
It is essentially if you decide to get to the point of arbitration and you feel like Howard Mishney is not able to come to a number that we're comfortable with, and we push it to arbitration, it's essentially, we push it to appraisal, it is essentially binding arbitration at that point.
And again, our goal working with all of your consultants, attorneys, and your adjuster is to try to get a resolution that the parties can agree to, rather than going through sort of adversarial and quasi-adversarial proceeding. But having the ability and authorization to go into the adversarial proceedings if necessary provides you with that ability to, have an independent third party confirm what we believe to be the law and the value.
And the things that we already got from other construction companies would indicate that we don't know for sure that value would be.
Correct. Correct.
So while we're not at the table, we've done our homework to believe that people at that table would be working with.
Correct.
have a lot of trust in our, insurance adjuster. But we're really, at that point, that's where we're at.
Yes, if we get to that point, that is going to be where it's at. And even before that point, there will be additional conversations. This is not a vote that you make tonight and then all of a sudden we come back with you and there's a resolution. No, there's going to be a lot more conversations.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. And
The
now,
second motion,
I bet you there's another one.
yes, it is very similar, but this would be to authorize Globe Midwest Adjusters International to file appraisal proceedings against Tokyo Marine Specialty Insurance Company if deemed necessary by legal counsel and the manager. And there, when I use legal counsel, it would more likely than not be Tim Deemer or me, because he's got the experience in those insurance matters. I'm leaving it generic as legal counsel, and I didn't identify Howard Mishney by name. Just, to leave it open, but it's a motion to authorize Globe Midwest International to file appraisal proceedings against Tokyo Marine if deemed necessary by legal counsel.
Right, good.
I would have been much more specific on those things, but I'll agree with that motion, make the motion.
I'll support.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Dan, appreciate it. All right. And now there's no discussion items, and so we'll move on to the manager's report.
Yep. Just a quick comment on that last part. Dan will still be involved, even though he's not the legal counsel. It's Mr. Deemer. Dan is involved in the consult of all of these issues. He is a valuable consult for me, and that will not change. So know that Mr. Martin will be involved. So some quick ones. One, strategic planning, great strategic planning session. I thought Kurt Wassink did a fantastic job. Really impressed with how coordinated our conclusions or our plan was, in that it was supported by seemed to be pretty much everyone, and we all were on the same page. So really appreciate that. I will be writing up a summary of that and get that to you for the next board meeting. Okay, we for this upcoming newsletter, we are moving to a 4-page newsletter. Just so you know, we've had a newsletter template designed by our communications team. So we will be having a much nicer newsletter piece that goes out. And one of the things that we're going to be adding for this upcoming newsletter is a significant update on the park with graphics and things of that nature. So just want to let you know, we will be increasing to a 4-page newsletter, which will increase some of the cost of the mailing. But I think it is a very valuable time for us to do that and get some really nice communication out to the entire township. We have our new person.
I would hope we could include some election news in that.
Of course. Yeah, we have a 2-page newsletter now, and that election stuff will still be there. And the reason why we're going to an additional 2 pages is so we have room for the park stuff. But yes, election stuff is still priority. Thank you, Danielle. The new person is Miss Sarah Dotson, has started in the planning and building department. I think we got a great one. Really impressed with her skills, her demeanor, her work with the customers, and she is sort of in local government. Her family is kind of a local government family, so that's also a nicety. Welcome her when you see her in the office, and looking forward for her to have a long career here in Park Township. Which brings us to the next position. Now that we have that filled, we will now move to fill Mika's assistant in short order once we get that person kind of up to speed, if you will. Moving on, water rescue is going to be a huge component of our next 6 months to a year of focus, and not only from the chief's perspective, but from my perspective. We need to recreate our group that we've had We're moving into the springtime. And so we're working on the MOU with the DNR, state DNR, and that'll be signed in short order. We have also scheduled our training for the people who will be beach patrol. And so that's going to happen and move forward. Just want to let you know that is continuing.
Can I make one comment? Just so you know, that's not a township thing.
Correct.
Okay, so be very clear, okay, because of what we talked about on Monday.
Yes, sir. That is me doing that separate.
Yep.
Farmland preservation is also something that we're going to start moving on. We're going to be advertising for the Farmland Preservation Committee, and we're going to start moving on creating that committee, getting those folks in place, and identifying how we look at this issue, short, medium, long term. And so I'm really excited about that as well. We're also going to be upgrading some of our signage for on the channel for large boats coming in to abide by the current existing law of what the speed limit is. It's already in the books. It's already law. But there is no signage for that. So I will be having Chad create a sign for big boats, I think over 26 feet. There's a mandatory speed limit for those boats coming into the channel into Lake Mac. And so we'll work with John Gromberg at the Big Red Lighthouse Foundation to secure a spot for that. And so larger boats that are coming recognize it's no wake all the way through the channel, but regardless, if you are a boat of a certain size, it doesn't matter whether it's wake or not, you have to follow to a specific speed limits. Okay, so we're talking about something a little bit different to make sure that those large boats, whether wake or not, know you can't go fast if you're over a certain size. And that is in the existing law today, regardless of the no wake rules. So that was it. Those are the comments that I had. And with that, I can take any questions.
Right, hearing none, we will move on to public comment. Anyone in the public want to comment? All right, we're going to close public comment. All right, we will go to board comments. Trustee Smolhofer.
I'll just ask, I was gonna show a couple of pictures of when I was recent trip, saw some sleeping policemen. And it's a thing for speed bumps. I was in the large city of Lima, Peru, and they have speed bumps everywhere. I know we have excuses that we can't have speed bumps because it's, but I tell you, these speed bumps were effective. They slow down. They get in. And sometimes they're very quick to say, okay, put the sign, people obey the sign. People obey the sleeping policeman. You're not flying across. And so I just think, this, like, if you remember the discussion a year ago, we have walkers who drive. And you go like, they're going too fast. And like, put up, if they have experiencing these bumps for 3 full days, we were going slow across. So I think we ought to put that into our arsenal of slowing the traffic down. And, I think our snowball drivers are smart enough to lift the blades, because there's ways to slow traffic down. Anyway, so Howard, if you could send a couple of those pictures, I sent them to you, you send them off to the board. We'll do. On your dais, I handed out a summary of the report of the CDP. You can be proud about Durham directly affect us and part numbers, but also the communities. So thank you for that. Also, coming out of the year of the park, we had in the year of park, kind of discussion we had on Monday. I guess the energy that we had, it's bright within this room. I would like to suggest that we have some celebrations upcoming in this park. We ought to have a park committee with the community volunteers that know how to party. I mean, we'll have a grand celebration for pickleball. Randall. You could have a grand celebration for a, the music and historic hangar, Randall. We could have, hats, and, I just think if we solicit folks in our community to say, part of a party committee, because we need to celebrate what's going on. And I don't want to put this burden on us to say, hey, Jim, organize the pickleball. Randall. No, yeah, we all have nothing. There's folks who like to do this stuff. And so I'd like to encourage us all to kind of say, okay, there's some people who would, lean into certain things and be part of the celebration committee. I don't want to say committee actually, Bill, makes it Bill. You don't be part of the party group, party team. Because I think there's just too much on our plate, too much going on here to keep it alive. We should have lots of reasons to celebrate this year. So that's just one suggestion. Throw that into your, thinking gap that maybe next month, first couple of months, and say, hey, this could be something like that.
Great, thank you.
I have a question for Steve. Back to the MAC. Once somebody fills out the paperwork, how long does it usually take for a decision to be made for if it's awarded?
Well, we meet every 2 months.
Every 2 months.
And the decision is made in the moment. And if Judy doesn't see the application appropriately filled out, she'll go back to you right away to help it be filled out. She won't wait for the meeting and have us, go, hey, there's a missing thing there. So if you submitted something, I think I got a meeting next month. It's coming up.
He hasn't yet, but the president of the fair board and I were talking, and I told him about the program.
Yeah.
And they're actually in need of an AED out there. I think that'd be a great idea because they have more than the fair, they have all the other activities.
Absolutely. So that'd be a great, very
Trying
good.
to get them to get that paperwork.
Get that paperwork submitted and, you have one vote with me, so.
Thanks.
Yep.
Right, Trustee Jones.
On the community building, we've had 2 public meetings since our last board meeting. Both those meetings were well attended. A lot of good information came out of that. The committee's in the process of kind of distilling that information and trying to figure out what exactly it means. They're doing a very nice job with people that we've hired as well, as far as putting the information, not only correlating the information, but then also assigning it to the different age groups. So we've got a really good insight into where the information is coming from and what demographic is giving us that information. We're trying to further vet that out a little bit right now with upcoming meetings. We're trying to design those meetings to better understand some of the key components of that. It also raised a number of different questions, which now is sending the people of the committee back out to sites that we visited, as well as new sites, to understand what does that kind of programming cost? How do they handle it? What kind of a staff do they have? Is it volunteers? Where does the resource base come from to make those things a reality? So we've got a couple of different things that are coming out of that. Our goal is to present something to the board in the June timeframe. That's tentative right now. We'll have a better idea after our upcoming meetings in May. So stay tuned to that, but it is our goal to get back to the board pretty quickly as far as kind of where we're at and distilling that information down to the point where we can start, if you will, the programming phase, not event programming, but more understanding. If we were to propose a building, these are the things that we would want in it, not the design or anything like that. That's for the architects to do later, but just the design. One of the things that was brought up and we were able to answer, hopefully the board agrees with us. There's been a lot of concern around the drawings of the park show the community building in quote unquote the corner with the parking lot around it. A lot of the committee is getting really concerned because the number of things that are being asked for don't correlate with that kind of position. We're seeing people that want to be a part of the community center and they want a quote unquote attached outside playing area or something like that, or some way to get to those areas without having to cross a parking lot. If you're here with your kids and your kids are out there and you're in there, do you have to cross traffic to get to those two things? And so the comment that we made back was, look, the drawing that's been presented is a placeholder. It's not for sure this is the way it's going to be. There's options for moving things around here and there or adjusting. Generally speaking, yes, that's where it's going to be. What the parking exactly is going to look like, or how things might be tied together discussion can be had around those things to determine what's best. And so we've tried to not let people get kind of shoehorned into one idea or another, and really just trying to work on the program. Better way to understand the program, and then we can design or let the architects design a layout that makes sense. So that's kind of where we're at. A lot of good work going on. The committee continues to be very well engaged. And the community has responded, I think, pretty well too in that. So more to come.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Clerk Peter.
The airport board on Monday held its budget hearing, public hearing, and approved the budget, our operating budget for next year. That was pretty well the only thing that's reportable from the meeting. We'll be reviewing the action plan next week. Some things that are coming up that are kind of fun. There's going to be a fly-in for tulip time. We always have a lot of air traffic anyway in tulip time, so we're putting together a party for that.
Thanks.
We're finishing up our food drive for Community Action House. And Aviation Day is August 17th, another party at the airport, pancakes.
Right.
And finally, Food Truck Fridays.
Oh.
We're gonna have food trucks at the airport on Fridays throughout the summer.
Oh, nice. What hours?
All I know right now is we're gonna have food trucks at the next month's meeting.
All
I'll
right.
be able to tell you.
All right, good, good.
One other thing, to my three colleagues who joined me for the board meeting in March. I did a little faux pas. I forgot completely to ask for nominations for a chair for the meeting. I just dove in and chaired the meeting. And I apologize for that. I was so focused on that agenda, I just wanted to get into it. So sorry about that.
Should Food Truck Friday be included in our newsletter? Sure. Right.
Sure, good. All right, Trustee DeHaan.
Yeah, you, again, Mika provided you a report summary of where we're at. Go into too much detail on that, but just to comment that the master plan is moving along very well. And I think it's really very close to being on target for the dates that were set out planned late last year. Maybe even just a hair bit ahead of that. So I think she's thinking that we'll have it before the board in October, which would be terrific. And the last meeting that I was not at, but they basically did a final review of the future land use map, and that's a biggie. So with that put together, you know, the whole plan now could be consolidated and put together, and the whole process of putting it in front of the public, et cetera, is now ready to go. The only other thing I'd comment about is in the February edition of the Township magazine, there's an article about Michigan's path to a prosperous future, challenges and opportunities. I just found it to be very fascinating, some of the information that's in here, it's detailed out in some of the various data, statistics, if you would, in terms of where Michigan has been and where it is now, and how do we get it back to where it was. So it's a great article. I highly recommend you consider reading it.
Very good. Right, Treasurer Steger.
I sent you the minutes of the max, the last two board meetings that we had. We're still trying to work on getting the contract for this coming year from them. There will be a few changes, I've been told. And we're trying to get a meeting together with Howard, Connie, myself, and with Max, just to review those. Our last meeting we did, and they're kind of celebrating there since COVID, they are now adding back some of the Saturday runs. So that'll help some people. We've had some requests from residents of Park Township to extend the hours here in Park Township so people can work till 7 and get home. Right now, they don't do those kind of runs in Park Township. So I'm trying to push them a little bit to look. There's a lot of studies going on with Max right now. A lot of grant money is coming in. So that's pretty exciting. It's getting back to pre-COVID levels. They're going to be purchasing some electric vehicles, which is kind of exciting. That's about it for Max. My recommendation, one of them for the park parties, is to use our local vendors here in Park Township. I think that would be a great help. So that's it for me.
Right, trustee Cerny.
Ottawa County Fair, if you, driven by there in the last day or so, you'll see hundreds of boats and trailers. Sure sign of summer right there. And if I could please ask Sergeant, I forgot to call it in, but maybe do a little extra patrol at night through there because all those units are sitting. Appreciate it. Then as far as zoning, again, Mika covered that, but we had one item Monday night and that was approved.
Very good. Good, thank you. Right, you have the agenda from the McIntyre Area Coordinating Council meeting, everything passed there. Thanks for the week. It's a big week, Monday, Thursday. So thank you. We had a big agenda tonight and we got it all done. So it was good work. Appreciate it. Next meeting is May 9 and then we have a work session on May 30. So be looking ahead at your schedule to determine on May 9 if we're going to have a work session on May 30. So, all right, and that's all that I have. So we will look for a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.